Welcome to Spirit Gym. Today's episode dives into one of the most controversial and scientifically overlooked phenomena shaping our environment, geoengineering. Joining Paul is activist and filmmaker Matt Landman, the creator of the viral documentary Frankenskies, which examines the rise of atmospheric aerosol programs and the evidence behind climate manipulation. With a background in business and statistics, Matt brings a data-driven perspective to a topic often dismissed as conspiracy. In this episode, Matt reveals how he woke up to the shocking reality of weather manipulation, EMF pollution, and a silent war on nature being waged right above our heads every single day. Paul and Matt dive into the science, the patents, the players behind the curtain, and what you're not being told about aluminum in your skies and EMF in your homes. But this conversation goes even deeper, to the spiritual warfare at play, the dismantling of natural law, and what it truly means to reclaim your sovereignty in a world of engineered illusions. If you enjoy this episode, we invite you to explore the deeper levels of connection and conversation available in the Spirit Gym membership community. Go to myspiritgym.com for details. Before we dive in, we'd like to say thank you for listening, as this podcast would not be possible without you, our subscribers and followers. We'd also like to thank our premier sponsors, Organifi, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley and Wild Pastures, and our new sponsors, Correct Life and Peak Tea. You'll hear their special offers and discounts throughout this episode, or you can visit the show notes page at paulchek.com/podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek. Our guest today is Matt Landman, the creator of the excellent Frankenskies documentary, which is one of the first documentaries I saw, making it very clear that something very wrong was happening to our skies, which you can find at frankenskies.com. Matt is a powerful, effective activist that supports activism against chemtrails, vaccines, 5G, and EMF pollution and challenges such as fluoride, GMOs, and has some helpful information on activism on his website, which is actualactivists.com. Matt's podcast can be found at wakingupwithmatt.com. And today, Matt and I will engage in a deep, important dialogue on the issues of chemtrails and EMF challenges and do our very best to inform you and inspire you to engage in effective activism. So, Matt, welcome.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm really grateful you did the documentary, and I know you've got a part 2 on the way, which is fantastic. Maybe to begin with, you can give us an overview of your background and what led you to the investigation of chemtrails and why you created the documentary Frankenskies.
Yes, happily. My background is I was a very normie, asleep, mainstream guy. I grew up in the DC area in Virginia, and I never in a million years would have ever thought that I would wake up to any of this. None of it. Like astrology, absolutely none of it would I've ever imagined. But I was interested in filmmaking at a young age, and I had a dream of becoming a filmmaker, and we were making little short movies when I was in my teens and early 20s. But I was in Virginia, which is not really much for film industry there, so I ended up going to business school. And I got entrenched in the business world, and I wore many hats. I've had like 50 different jobs, from a lot of restaurant industry, but also stock market and all this different business sort of stuff. And eventually I moved to California to hopefully maybe get into film industry, but I never really thought it would actually happen. You know, I thought maybe I'd dabble here and there, but I wanted to have a different change of life. And from San Diego, I ended up in Northern California, still only aware that like 9/11 was an inside job. Like I never had this full awakening, but I did learn about that, which was through documentary filmmaking, which was a beautiful thing. I was working in a restaurant and living in the DC area after 9/11, and someone handed me a link, I believe it was, and I started looking into loose change and Zeitgeist. And Loose Change by Dylan Avery, I ended up meeting him. He's another Virginian, actually. And Loose Change and Zeitgeist really just opened my mind to the possibility of lies and distrust, which I never thought that could even be a possibility. But then I found myself getting a master's degree. I got a master's degree in business administration from Cal State Humboldt in Northern California, very agriculture, redwoods community. And from there, I ended up working. And then also while in school, I did the film. I studied 16 millimeters film and got like a film minor, not a full degree, but I dabbled and got my feet wet enough to be really enthralled with the possibility of putting something together. But I never thought it was going to be a documentary or about chemtrails. I thought it'd be like a narrative, or I'd become an actor or director, for someone else. But after I got my new degree, in my 30s, I went back to school. I went to Virginia Tech first, got a business degree in marketing management. Then after I got the MBA and the film program and what have you, I started working in finance. And that, again, was back in the matrix, and it didn't serve me well. And I left that job as a finance analyst and finally worked on an organic farm where I got grounded. Yeah, it was the biggest pay cut of my life, but it was the best decision I'd ever made because I really knew nothing. And I was so cocky. You go through these phases like in your 20s. No, first of all, it's like when you're like 5 years old, you think you know everything. Then you realize you don't know anything. And then when you're like 13, you think you know everything. And then, and then you're 20, you think you know everything. There's all these back and forths. Well, I was in my 30s and thought I knew everything. And my first day on the farm, I realized I knew absolutely nothing really. Like the ideas of having all these varieties of food that I had no idea about. I didn't even know potatoes grew potatoes. First day, I was like, wow, I'm really ignorant, because I thought those potatoes were just mutating in my cupboard. I never thought that you plop them in the ground. I never knew. I kind of grew up in the city. I never knew they would grow food and how abundant they were, and that there's all these varietals and all these things. First day on the farm, I literally got so grounded and started learning so much and got in the best shape of my life. And by being grounded and connected to the earth, I was also connected to the other elements, the sky and what have you. And I started to see patterns, and my friend actually planted the seed on the phone with me. I was venting to him about all these college kids didn't know about 9/11, because I thought I knew so much. And he was like, well, what about chemtrails? He just said the word on the phone. I'd never heard the word. He's like, oh, Matt, you showed me Loose Change and Zeitgeist. You don't know about chemtrails. You got to go look this up. And I happened to be able to look it up at the same time that the weather was being very extremely engineered. That we were in the midst of, we were at the very tail end of like a 5-year catastrophic drought for California, where I learned that this atmospheric bubble was being created to steer the jet stream. We can talk into how they do it and what have you, but the jet stream was being steered, whereas Northern California would always get the seasonal deluge from like November to March. It would always rain from about San Francisco all the way up to Canada. And this atmospheric river, this jet stream that usually would dump the seasonal rain, it was going around Northern California and not hitting California like it always would. So we were in the midst of this massive drought, and here comes this big rainstorm. And where I farmed and grew potatoes and all sorts of organic food and learned so much about everything, like I said, we were so close to the ocean that we could hear the waves crashing. It's nice and moist because it's dry farming. A lot of things are dry farming, like potatoes, that I learned you don't have to water things. I didn't even know that. And then as the storm came rolling in, whereas we would have very sparse air traffic every single day, maybe I'd see a plane or two fly over, on the edge of this massive storm where it's black storm clouds coming in off the ocean. And I'm out there harvesting pumpkins because we were worried about losing crop in the rot of the rain that was about to come. And so I'm out there and I witnessed weather engineering. What I later learned was they were spraying aluminum to dissipate the moisture so that it wouldn't rain, because these storm clouds went over. And although we had a 100% chance of rain for the next week, and everyone was all excited about this rain coming to alleviate the drought, we didn't get any rain at all. No drops fell from the sky. But what happened is what I witnessed, because I was really nerdy when I went back to school. Like at 18, I wasn't ready for university. But at 30 years old, I was very competitive and wanted to do well. And so when I was in my statistics class, I loved the stock market prior. So I really nerded out and I excelled in statistics. And what I witnessed on that day was a statistical anomaly. It was an irregular pattern of appearance. A bunch of planes showed up, whereas usually there's only like 1 or 2 planes in a whole day. And at this point, I saw about a dozen zigzagging the sky, which that's already statistically significant. You know, if you compare that to all the other days and there's not all these planes zigzagging around, then what's happening there? And to add to it, these planes were special because they were leaving these persistent linear cirrus cloud formations out of the back, these lines out of the back of all the planes, and crisscrossing the sky on the edge of the storm pattern. So we're talking about tic-tac-toe boards right as the storm came in, and the storm goes and is enveloped by this haze that unravels. And I still didn't think anything of it, but I went home and did a little research because I had this seed planted because of my friend had said the word. And as I woke up to it, I started trying to sound the alarm and tell my friends, tell my peers, tell my mom, my grandma, my grandmother. And people kind of just said they were like, people that had already heard the word chemtrails, they were like, yeah, that's a crazy conspiracy, Matt. You're crazy for talking about that. And so, whereas I thought I had this new amazing piece of information for the world, when I brought it to people, they scoffed at me. And then I was like, no, you have to go down this rabbit hole like I did. And the rabbit hole is a wild, dark place and takes discernment. And it's like me being able to look into the stock market and be able to do research and to dig deep into a company and find reasons not to invest in them. That's kind of like how my mind works. So I didn't mind digging deep into the chemtrails and being like, oh, I don't resonate with that, but this is very fact-based. And oh, wow, someone made this movie and this and that. But nothing was potent and fact-based enough and solid enough to share with my peers back in DC and my family and stuff so that they could be like, oh, Matt, you might be right. So eventually I started trying to put together my own presentations and started passing out flyers in my local community. And I'm almost done with the story, and thanks for bearing with me.
No, I don't mind at all. It's important.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, what happened was I lost traction. I passed out flyers. I did a presentation in front of about 3.5 people. And I was like, okay, what next? I never had the drive to make the movie because I found someone else had done that. Michael J. Murphy, rest in peace. He made What in the World Are They Spraying, this documentary, and then also Why in the World Are They Spraying? And I was like, oh, someone else made a movie? Because I had maybe the notion to make a movie at one point, and I was like, oh, someone did it, cool. And then nobody really cared. But then I actually had this and this gets kind of spiritual or, beyond maybe some people's realm of.
Not mine. Go for it.
But I had this calling to move to Vancouver, Canada. It was just like I'd maybe been there a couple of times to explore and visit friends and whatnot. But I've traveled around the world. I went to Kiev there's a lot of things that I've done around the world. I've been to places and things, and going to Vancouver was just a vacation. I never thought I'd move there.
I grew up on Vancouver Island.
I love it. Beautiful place. Yeah. Tofino, really cool. And a lot of things really cool. I almost ended up living there my girlfriend was going to teach at a Waldorf school over there, but I ended up not. But yeah, and I did live in Roberts Creek across the side, and which is on the Sunshine Coast. I ended up living over there as well, which is where I became sensitive to a smart meter. It's wild. I lived right next to a smart meter, and it changed my whole trajectory in life because I was like, oh, these things are very evil because they shouldn't be on people's homes. But anyways, I felt called. Like I felt this resonant energy, kind of like hard to explain actually, and especially at that stage in my life. I was like, wow, I'm feeling not just chills or goosebumps, but something, maybe my higher self, maybe God, maybe the universe, something is resonating with me. Every time I think of the word Vancouver, every time I say the word Vancouver, it's just, I was being called to go to Vancouver, Canada. I couldn't even explain it. And so I packed up my bags like every, idiot does I was just like, I'm going for it. Let's see what this is. And I actually got rejected from the border, and it wasn't really for any good reason. It's just that I didn't have a good enough story for them,
That's interesting.
They don't like people just moving to the Canada without like a story and without having a reason to come back. Like it looked like my car was packed to the brim. It looked like I was just escaping,
Right. Yeah.
And so I got denied, and then I was like, oh man, maybe that's not my destiny. And then my life kind of fell apart. But then I ended up going to Vancouver, Canada anyways, like a year or so later. And day one, my life became like an activist. I'm walking down the streets of Vancouver, and in front of the art museum was a group of activists. It was March 11th, 2015. And on every 11th of the month, they were out there with 9/11 truth signs and brochures and documentaries. And I didn't even see them. I just saw this guy in the middle of the street with this sign that said WTC7, World Trade Center 7, WTF, right? And I was like, oh, wow, these are my friends. And I went and started talking to them, and I went to the booth, and I was like, that was a long time ago, guys, but what about chemtrails? Do you know about this? And a new friend pops his head up, and he was like, you mean solar geoengineering, aka solar radiation management? And these older 9/11 activists, they're like 20 years older than me. They really lit a fire of hope under my ass and told me like, you have a dream of making a documentary about chemtrails? Just do it. And I dove in head first, because it's kind of all I really needed was someone telling me that I could, and offering me a little bit of guidance and whatnot. And I'll be honest, and I'm embarrassed to say, before I met those guys, I didn't even know that the jabs were bad. I was very naive. I was really wet behind the ears regarding like activism. I thought I knew so much. I knew fluoride was bad. I knew GMO. I knew about that, but there were so many things that I didn't know. And so I ended up really blossoming in Vancouver. It's a very high vibrations place. British Columbia altogether is a very amazing place where you can have these connections and openings of heart and mind, I believe.
Well, on that note, I grew up on Vancouver Island. As I said earlier, I think if I remember right, we'd get 162 inches of rain on average. But I don't know if it was how many years ago. Some of my family members and my stepfather said, there's hardly any rain. We're having forest fires like crazy. So something definitely shifted in the British Columbia area, because, that whole area used to be just a lush rainforest. And I don't know if they've come out of it yet or not, but they experienced quite a problematic drought, which again led to fires and all sorts of problems. So I'm curious if you think that was the product of geoengineering or just a natural cycle.
Oh, well, that's a great question. I'm glad we're diving into that. It's definitely man-made, and because of geoengineering. And climates like that, like moist rainforests surrounded by waterways and lakes and rivers, pesky droughts won't just burn down the forests. Okay, these places are very resilient, actually.
Yeah.
And what's going on here is, and it's very deep and diabolical, but to first back up and to understand why, there's a problem reaction solution kind of scenario being played out by the New World Order, the powers that be, the World Economic Forum, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, whatever you want to give them, the Bilderberg Group, that's kind of a trigger word for people. But whoever these groups are that go to the Bohemian Grove and erect the Georgia Guidestones and what have you, they have created this long-term plan using geoengineering to create this catastrophe scenario where there's supposed global warming and climate change, to then push these draconian measures, such as maybe even climate change lockdowns, but definitely 15-minute cities, low emission zones in the UK and what have you, and even this whole narrative of like sustainability, which is the opposite thereof, where
and
like
carbon taxes,
cows being demonized, eating bugs, all this stuff is all hinging on the lie that climate change and global warming is real based on these extreme weather events and fires. But all of these extreme weather events and fires are being created with geoengineering, with these weather engineering tools. So the fires, and it's a very deep dive, but the fires are very layered. First and foremost, the chemtrail constituents that are being sprayed on these forests. So I moved to Northern California from San Diego, and it's redwoods. It's very much sparsely populated. It's mainly forest. And I would watch these chemtrails be sprayed over the forests. And I'm like, oh, are they making it rain tomorrow? No. Oh, are they spraying it on the people with lithium to calm them down? No, they're spraying it over these forests almost very regularly, like almost daily. Started scratching my head. I didn't even understand it. But now I see the agenda unraveling. Decades of spraying patented fire accelerants and desiccants. So desiccants means it dries things up. Yeah, it sucks the moisture out. And so when I witnessed that weather engineering the first time, the constituents of the chemtrails were aluminum oxide, which spreads out moisture and makes it not fall out. So it like dries things up. It also will dry up your brain or bee's brain and cause dementia and Alzheimer's. And now the number one cause of death in the UK is dementia and Alzheimer's, which comes from the aluminum toxicity buildup in the brain. So that's something to look out for. So desiccants are being sprayed on the forest, drying them out. Patented fire accelerants are being sprayed. It's just waiting for the forest fire to come along, and then it'll just be like very unmanageable and way crazier than a regular fire. But also what the constituents do is they mess with the biome of the soil. So the soil microbiome becomes super unbalanced and then highly alkaline. And then in the high alkaline environment, like a lot of conifers and trees need actually a slightly acidic soil. So the very alkaline environment creates an imbalance, and then molds and funguses grow that can impact the tree biology and make them sick. But also when the aluminum gets uptaken into the tree, breaks down their immune system.
It breaks down the immune system of anything, of any living creature, including human beings.
It's very true. And then they become susceptible to beetle invasions and whatnot, and or molds and funguses or anything like that, pests. And then also, to make that matters even worse, the aluminum uptaken by the roots, it prevents the tree from actually being able to uptake water properly. It can't become hydrated, just like people and bees, as well, like you're saying. So it's a recipe for disaster. These forests are sprayed with this stuff that makes fires go. It's like made in fireworks. It's used in fireworks, aluminum oxide, barium salts. And we know that these are the constituents for many reasons, which we can get into. And then once it's accumulated over decades and these forest fires are tender, they're waiting to just go up in flames. There's fires lit on the ground through maybe arsons, but also precipitated lightning through patented technology to make lightning storms. And then here is the thing that makes it even more insulting than ever. Windstorms are engineered to make these matters exponentially worse. When you're dealing with 100-mile-per-hour winds going the direction of a city that is slated to become a smart city, but you just need to clear out the area or whatever, firefighters can't manage. It makes it an extreme. And the reason why it's so insulting is that exact same technology could be used to engineer rain. They could rain out the fires, but they're mum. The media's mum. The scientific community is mum. Everybody with a decent followership is silent. But if we rewind all the way back to the 60s, 50s, 40s, it is common knowledge that the rain making and engineering rain and seeding clouds and all this stuff is there. It's the patents go back to the 1800s, and you can look up on your search engine 175 patents proving weather engineering and geoengineering to be real. There's 175 patents that just line up how they got to where they're at today, which is very advanced considering they could flood out Vietnam in the 60s. Now they're utilizing frequency and lasers and all sorts of stuff.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. As a therapist that is constantly teaching people about nutrition and hydration, I've found that the only people that really understand and use electrolytes are endurance athletes. But what most people don't know about is the importance of electrolytes for general health, mineral nutrition, improved hydration, blood sugar and insulin regulation, enhanced vitality, and enhanced brain function. Though there is a rising awareness of electrolytes and many companies offering them, I can assure you that they are not all created equally, and what that usually comes down to is the quality and cleanliness of the source materials and how they are combined.
Having tested many electrolyte products, I was honestly shocked when I experienced Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes. Why? Because I eat a super high quality diet and back it up with the world's highest quality whole food supplements to guarantee a full spectrum of nutrition, and I'm a lover of high quality salts, so I thought for sure I was getting enough electrolytes. When Paleo Valley sent me their essential electrolytes to test, I was honestly shocked at how much more energy I had. I even experienced an improved level of mental clarity that I didn't expect from an electrolyte drink, of all things. Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes are available in orange, watermelon, and lemon lime flavors and is a whole food sourced electrolyte blend. Get the complete benefits of trace minerals and electrolytes found in unprocessed ancient sea salt, organic coconut water, and seaweed extract without the refined sugar and synthetic ingredients in most electrolyte drinks. Though Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes are good for children and adults, I feel this product may be one of the most important dietary additions for anyone age 50 and beyond, because the benefits that essential electrolytes offers addresses many of the problems common in aging people today. In fact, I've been adding them to my daily health and performance shake since the day I first tried them and will continue to do so. To get your essential electrolytes and save 15% on your order, go to paleovalley.com/Chek15. That's PALEO valley.com/CHEK15. If we want to make the world a better place, we've all got to stay healthy and fit and support companies like Paleo Valley, because they're a perfect example of the kinds of companies we need more of in the world today. Enjoy essential electrolytes.
Yeah, I've seen a number of different documentaries and investigative journalists showing, and I've seen videos showing the United States military, working on developing and using geoengineering for battlefield purposes. So it's also a military industrial technology that's been around since the 40s, and obviously they haven't stopped working on it and fine tuning it. Then you throw in all the lasers and all the videos showing clearly that there's lasers being used to start a lot of these fires. But one of the things I'd like it if maybe you could give us a breakdown of what your findings are as to what's in the chemtrails. You've mentioned barium, you've mentioned aluminum oxide. I've seen many different videos, and one of the things that I found is, and I even saw one not too long ago of a lady in I believe in Northern California who was really irritated because she realized what was going on and how it was affecting everything in her area. And so she started analyzing, I believe, rain and snow and doing, getting a lab to do an analysis. And I don't know if you saw the video, but she went right to the local airplane hangar where she realized these planes were coming in and out of, and confronted the pilots, and they just sort of did what soldiers do and say, oh, we don't have the clearance to talk about that. You'll have to talk to somebody above us. And finally, they kicked her out of the hangar, but she laid it on the line and said, do you guys realize what the hell you're doing? So maybe you can give us sort of the ingredient list. Is it different in different places? What have you found out?
That's a great question. And it's important for people that are interested in the subjects to know the who, what, why, where, when, and how. Because when we have that information, then we can share it with our peers. And when you're trying to share information like this with your friends, family, and peers that have these big questions, and when you don't know the answers to the questions, it's easy to be dismissed and to be put into the box of a conspiracy theorist. But if you've got the facts, if you're ready to handle their questions, which I actually get the same questions over and over. So eventually you start being able to answer properly and meet them where they're at and what have you. So the what was being sprayed is, there's different constituents in different places, but the primary constituents of the aerosol sprays are aluminum, barium, strontium, aluminium, depending on where you live. Now, there's also evidence that coal fly ash is used, which that's a whole story, but it's the soot from burning coal And once you burn the coal, it's already nanoformed, the soot, the ingredients are. So you guys, if you can just clean out these smokestacks and get that soot, it's got nano level titanium, mercury, lead, you name it, cadmium, all sorts of strontium, all these heavy metals. And I believe oftentimes those are just, I know actually through my research that those are just put on a train, taken to Air Force Base and sprayed in the sky. So there's like a whole list of stuff from the burning of coal that gets sprayed. Generally, it's filtered out so that the utilization of the sprays, when they do it, they can mix things together properly. So they don't want this rough and dirty, like all the coal fly ash. So they'll take that coal fly ash and extract from it at the Air Force Base the nanoparticulate aluminum. And then they'll extract from it the nanoparticulate strontium and the barium, and then they'll charge those differently with a positive and negative charge, and then they'll spray them separately in the atmosphere, have them mixed together, and then zap them with ground-based stations, microwaving them. So how do we know? And then that they're able to steer the weather and whatnot by creating high and low pressure systems through the microwaving of the sky, which we can talk about. So the constituents, aluminum, barium, strontium, how do we get there? Well, we have to take science into our own hands because we're not being told the truth anymore. It's like the cloud seeding bit. It's very fascinating because if you go on your microfiche and you find these old newspaper articles, in the 60s and 70s, it was common knowledge that cloud seeding was available. And farmers would actually wait for the clouds to come over their crops, their land, their farms, and spray in the skies constituents and make it rain. But they would actually even spray the minerals and nutrients that they needed. So say their crop needed some potassium, they would spray potassium and make it rain water and potassium on their crops. So that's how common it was. And it's in the newspaper clips, but then the knowledge got swept under the rug. And now farmers don't even realize they can do that, and they're out there praying and doing their rain dances, and it's drought-stricken land. And then Bill Gates comes along, or whoever, gobbles up their land for pennies on the dollar. And then if Bill Gates is the one controlling the weather, you better believe he's going to get rain the next year after he's gobbled up that land. Very diabolical. So the patents tell the story of the aluminum, barium, strontium being used, but also if you look into the NASA funding, so people ask, well, who's doing the spraying? And that's also very deep. It's partly the Department of Energy, it's the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, but also NASA has a big chemtrail program. So that's something to wrap your head around. NASA has a very massive chemtrail program. It's on their website. You can just look at it, hidden in plain sight. You got to know to look it up on their website. And it's called the CARE program, C-A-R-E.
What a crazy title.
Yeah, what's even crazier is the UK's program is an acronym titled Satan. And they don't even refer to the wording, they just call it Satan. It's like, yeah, the Satan program, this, Satan program, that, stands for stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation. But the CARE program through NASA, it has a whole massive dark budget. We know that it's like the budget's black ops because we don't know where all of NASA's budget goes individually, but NASA overall has a budget of $85 million US per day.
Per day? Wow.
Per day. It's very easy to look up. You can look it on your search engine, or you can just ask what's NASA's annual budget and then divide it by 365. It's $85 million a day. And they have a chemtrail program. So then it starts to make sense. A massive program with drones, ground-based stations, fleets of drones and aircraft and what have you. And it's all like right there, and it goes years back. And in their disclosure, they use aluminum, barium, strontium, those three constituents, to make noctilucent clouds using the atmosphere as a laboratory. So they tell us they're doing it. To what extent, we don't know. But then given that information, activists have gone out and asked big questions. So there was a group in Kingman, Arizona. This was like about 15 years ago. Kingman, Arizona was like beautiful cobalt blue skies, desert, and you get monsoon season. But other than that, you've got like a cobalt blue, like clear blue sky. Well, when they start chemtrailing, people were like, wait a second, mid-90s, and now they're starting to spray lines in the sky. And this group of activists, 30 people came together, all different walks of life, You know, you wouldn't think a single person was a tinfoil hatter in the room of this activist that had to come together in Kingman, Arizona. They tested their blood, they tested their hair, they tested their soil, and all got high levels of aluminum-bearing strontium. Then they waited for the chemtrail sprays to come on the edge of storm patterns, and what goes up does come down, because we're talking about heavy metals. These are heavy metals, aerosolized heavy metals. And then through repeated investigations, and so you create the hypothesis, is there going to be large levels of aluminum-bearing strontium in this rainwater after these days of heavy sprays? And they test the rainwater over and over and over and over, and they're getting extremely high levels of aluminum-bearing strontium. Then the rest of the world, other people around the world, start testing their rainwater after heavy spray days. And you can cross-reference that to days when there's no lines in the sky and there's no aluminum-bearing strontium in your water. Like, eventually, you can't just take authority as your truth.
Amen.
You have to take truth as your authority. You know, but the choice is always yours. Truth as authority or authority as truth. You always have the choice to make the decision to honor the truth with the integrity that it deserves, or you can go back to sheep. You know, you can ignore the facts. But eventually, after all of the data is added up, it is obvious that there is an aerosol agenda, a campaign of geoengineering spraying, and it's primarily aluminum-bearing strontium, but also lithium is showing up in certain areas, and manganese. I believe I've learned manganese is sprayed, and that's what mad cow disease was. African-American activist Dick Gregory was noting that when the manganese gets sprayed over the ghettos of New York, everyone would erupt into violence. Manganese makes people crazy and violent. But all of this research and activists coming together, making documentaries and having worldwide symposiums and whatnot to realize that it's the constituents and who's doing it and trying to gather the pieces. And they've realized it's aluminum-bearing strontium. Geoengineering is ongoing. This was before 2016. Before 2016, it was like very open for debate. Like, what is going on? Are they doing it? Is it what's happening? After 2016, the debate actually, in my eyes, ended because the mainstream media, the mainstream came out with this solution to global warming, geoengineering. And they start telling people we've got 12 new clouds, which is in my movie, and each cloud looks like a variation of geoengineering. And now, through this massive worldwide insane gaslighting, the mainstream is telling us that because of our carbon emissions and global warming and sea level has gotten so out of hand, which is all a farce, that they have a solution, and it's geoengineering. It's dimming the sky, and you're welcome. And so before 2016, the word geoengineering was a synonym to chemtrails, and it was a tinfoil hatter conspiracy word, and never would it be given the time of day. Now it's in the children's books. You can get a master's degree in it, and people are preparing themselves to become geoengineers, but they go outside and see the sky, and they don't realize that is what they're going to be doing, and that is already happening, and it will look exactly like that when they start doing it in the future, but they're told it's not happening now, and through this gaslighting, programming, indoctrination, what have you, they don't see the writing on the wall, the elephant in the room, that it's already happening, and it's causing this domino effect where people will believe that there's a problem, that is the problem. They create heat waves and drought, and then they say, oh, global warming, climate change, we have to make geoengineering to save you from it. But people don't realize that they're actually making the problem the entire time with the geoengineering.
The question is, will they get their degree before they get Alzheimer's from being immersed in all this shit every day and not, being smart enough to realize it? Well, one of the things that I saw that I wanted to share with you, and this was not too long ago, this was in Northern California. This guy, I think he works in the solar panel industry, and he's kind of one of these guys that likes to live off grid. He's a guy that, installs solar panels for people for a living. And he's got, a good technical background. And he had been monitoring for quite some time how much energy his own solar panels were producing. And he noticed the more chemtrails there were in the sky, the less solar energy he was able to generate with his solar panels. So he started monitoring this, and he released a video showing clear as a bell that this geoengineering is actually blanketing the sun so it can't get to solar panels, and it's causing a reduction in people's ability to produce energy through solar panels. I thought was a great observation and a kind of nice objective way to measure it. The question I always have, and I've been looking into this stuff for many years, where the fuck do these people think they live? Where do they think their children are going to grow up? What do they think they're going to eat? I mean, what goes through the minds of these? I mean, I can't help but say it. This is like stupider than stupid. It's kind of like poisoning your own farm and wondering why you're sick while you're eating the food. Have you ever looked into what the mindset is behind these people, and how can they not pay attention to the fact that they're blanketing the very food, air, and water that they live in with their own silliness?
Enzymes are one of the most important things we can use to supplement our diet. Very few people have normal levels of digestive enzymes. It's extremely common to be digestive enzyme deficient because so many people are eating cooked foods, processed foods, packaged foods, etc. The best digestive enzymes I've ever found are Masszymes by Bioptimizers. And one of the things I like about them is not only are they the most advanced technology for how they're produced, the science behind them, but I take them on an empty stomach every morning and every night as proteolytic enzymes to help clean my body. So I've got Wade here, who's the formulator of these enzymes, to tell us how do they work as digestive and proteolytic enzymes, because today I think we really need to be supplementing with high quality enzymes. So Wade, what's unique about Masszymes?
Well, one of the interesting things is undigested protein is one of the biggest contaminants that cause problem for people, whether it's in their blood or inflammatory conditions or even impairing recovery. And it's quite common amongst athletes who have high protein diets, interesting enough, who are looking to add recovery, but they're not breaking down their protein effectively. And that was my case way back in the day as a former bodybuilding champion. So we set about cultivating and developing an enzyme formulation that handled all of the amino acids in a pH range from 2 to 12, as well as providing an assortment of assistant enzymes. In other words, it doesn't just break down protein, it handles carbohydrates, it handles fats, it handles fibers, a variety of different things, and they work synergistically together to make sure that you can break down just about any food and digest it properly. Now, when you talk about the difference between enzymes, there's digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. Systemic enzymes such as like nattokinase or serrapeptase. Well, they don't help break down digestion, but they can break down inflammation or inflammatory conditions, undigested proteins, or scarring tissue inside the body. Well, it turns out when you take Masszymes on an empty stomach, it works exactly the same way. It will go into the bloodstream and now works as a systemic enzyme, reducing inflammation, accelerating recovery times. Matt just tore his Achilles tendon and made a full recovery after surgery within a few weeks, which they expected for many months. He was taking as many as 100 a day. Now, I'm not suggesting people do that, but this was an extreme condition. And the bottom line is Masszymes is great for recovery, for cleaning up undigested proteins in the system, as well for digesting just about any meal. If this isn't the best digestive enzyme or systemic enzyme that you've ever taken, you get your money back. That's the Bioptimizer guarantee.
Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners can get 10% off their purchase of Masszymes by going to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and use the code PAUL10 at checkout. You can choose from 3 different sizes, and in addition, Bioptimizers always have special bonus gifts and additional savings when you get multiple bottles. So go to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and use the code PAUL10 to check out Masszymes with 10% off.
Definitely, I gave that a lot of thought when I first started diving into this because I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt at first. Like, oh, maybe they're actually doing it for our own good or something. Could it possibly be so evil? It really is pretty evil. And we live in this world of duality. And most all of us have these beautiful hearts and souls. And it's nearly impossible for us to put ourselves in these shoes of these megalomaniac, technocratic, almost soulless, people. It's just insane. But the operators, the drone pilots, the people loading the chemicals on the plane and what have you, I think most of the planes are now automated, they're unmanned. But there were times when there were people flying these jets, and still there are, around the world, people flying the jets and pressing the button on and off and what have you, but not as much as it once was. I think primarily it's automated drones. But here's the deal. These people are heavily indoctrinated. Like, how do people pull the trigger in war, and knowing that it's genocide? They're so heavily indoctrinated that it would like blow our minds, because we're very much trying to not be, like we're the opposite end of that spectrum. But they are compartmentalized as well, very much compartmentalized. That's how the military industrial complex gets away with so much, crimes against humanity, really. And they're on a very strict need to know basis, right? And in that need to know basis, they and through the indoctrination, they are told that there is, it's like, oh, we're not supposed to be telling you this. This is top secret, but we're on the verge of a complete global meltdown. Like, the world is going to end, and we have to save the world. So you're a hero. You're a hero for doing what you're doing, but it's also top secret, because if everybody knew that we were on the verge of calamity, the system would shut down. People wouldn't, go to work anymore, like literally. And so people that do start to wake up and scratch their heads, because I have had like kind of whistleblowers or people that are 2 degrees of separation from people that work at these places. And they ask, like, can I keep them safe? They know that whistleblowers do not hardly exist anymore. Whistleblowers are generally like 99.9%, they're controlled. They're blowing the whistle and getting a paycheck from that same company to control that narrative, so that other whistleblowers don't step up, so that the narrative is controlled, so they can control the opposition. There's so many layers to it all. And people like with good hearts, like, wait, why would they blow the whistle on themselves? For lots of good reasons, actually, But then at the same time, the people who would be whistleblowers, they know that they won't get away with it and that their lives would be at stake, because it's like, it's just the fact of the world. Like, it's not the safe world that we grew up in, where you think that whistleblowers have these whistleblower protection acts and all this sort of stuff like that. It's not like that. So even if you are like in the system and then waking up and realizing, oh, wow, I should tell someone about this, it won't work out in your favor, because you've already karmically sold your soul, really, is the truth of the matter. And I believe that the powers that be know that, and they get to play judge, jury, and executioner. If you had a pure heart and you went in and then you realize, oh, and then you didn't get your hands dirty, and then, I think it'd be a different story. But I think people that get into the business of chemtrailing, they're already, they end up being part of it, and then they've committed crimes against humanity, and then their karma is, it turns into an interesting. But everyone asked that question, and then it gets layered and then deeper, because, well, what about the elite? Why would they spray themselves? Why would they spray their own children? That's very much like a very human and sweet, like heart-centered, like, oh, what, like because we have souls. We're like, oh, why would they do that to their kids? They are trying to dismantle the evolution, the rising consciousness of humanity. Like, they're not worried about these little things. They have bunkers. They have HEPA filters in their limousines. They know what's being sprayed when and where. So they know what to avoid and what not to avoid. And also, they surely have the antidote too, through like complex blood transfusions and chelation methodologies. Like, they have been planning this out for a long time. An example that I like, because people are still like, what, really? What? An example that I like to share is children were not eating lead paint. But that narrative was created in an evil boardroom, a think tank that came together because the the gasoline, it was leaded. And they were fumigating. They were fumigating the streets of America, of the world, with lead. So kids were getting sick. And the evil think tank was like, okay, well, we're going to come out with 5G, and this is going to be used to lower the fertility of humanity, to push transhumanism and transfer of consciousness. They have these agendas that go out decades and centuries. I mean, it's very diabolical, but there's bloodlines that don't want to face karma, and they're trying to disrupt the evolutionary cycle of reincarnation on Earth, like to dismantle God's whole plan. It's so evil and very satanically driven and stuff like that. And if that doesn't resonate with you, just, don't kill me, the messenger, don't judge me for these little bits. Try to see the overall picture of the.
Well, I think there's so
outlining.
much evidence backing what you're saying. Anybody that would be thinking of you negatively or judging you is just doing it from a place of ignorance or laziness and not wanting or fear of finding the truth out. Have you ever read the book DNA Pirates of the Sacred Spiral by Leonard Horowitz, MD?
I know the author, but not that one. I'm
okay,
gonna write
well,
it down.
If you look into that book, he shows you, for example, that for almost 100 years, Carnegie and I'm brain farting, Rockefeller have been working to control people and do it wirelessly. And once Francis Crick identified what the DNA was, then they put countless millions, if not billions, into learning how to control people wirelessly through the DNA. I used to work in advanced electronics. I repaired weapon systems on Cobra helicopters. I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. So, that was 83 through 86. And I know the kind of electronics we had then. They already had, by 89, they had weapons for scattering crowds, which were frequency-based weapons and controlling people's thoughts and emotions. And I've actually looked up the patents on them and seen them. So this stuff's been going around for a while. I think, the question of where do these people think their children live and they live themselves isn't really just open-hearted. It's just common sense. You like to say, well, shit, this is pretty stupid. It's like poisoning your house and wondering why you're dying. One of the things that I recently saw, I believe it was a documentary or a video that somebody had shared with me, was that someone had found that they were putting glyphosate in chemtrails now as well. I was watching a documentary on, I think it was on EMF pollution, but they showed in that documentary they're spraying glyphosate all over national forests. I'm like, what the fucking hell is going on? Have you heard anything about glyphosate being put in chemtrails yourself?
That's an interesting bit, and I'm going to take a jump back for a minute. So the evil technocrats, they also have patents on the aluminum-resistant seeds, and they know that only their food will grow.
I didn't realize that.
In this dystopian world. So they're able to control the future food supply through the patents and the technology, and eventually only their Monsanto Franken B will survive, and only their stuff will be able to exist.
And Bill Gates owns the largest seed bank in the world. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, he's the largest farm owner in the United States, too. And he owns the patent. Microsoft and Bill Gates own a patent on quelling and destroying hurricanes. So the patent for stopping a hurricane is out there, and they could always be just completely turned to nothing. But he's the one that owns that patent. Just like how a auto manufacturer will come and gobble up some water-powered engine or something like that so that it can't come out, actually. They're doing it for nefarious purposes and whatnot. Remind me of the last question.
Have you heard of glyphosate being put into chemtrails?
The chemtrails is layered, right? So you mentioned that woman who approached the pilots, and that was local cloud seeding. There's local cloud seeding that they do for the hydro plants and whatnot, and they'll use titanium flares, and they're spraying chemicals. And those people are more, you can approach them. But where I live, for instance, there's an international airport, and all the planes going into the international airport, they don't leave any lines. And then all of the planes spraying, they're going to secret bases, back and forth. So it's those planes going back and forth to the secret bases. They're spraying and mixing together the metals, the heavy metals and whatnot. And they're very covert. No one's going to admit that they're actually doing it. And so there's bills being passed in different states, to ban those things. But this is above government, way above states, way above even countries. And so they're not going to admit that they're doing it. So good luck addressing them. But there are public spraying campaigns for cloud seeding, for instance, a ski resort, snowpack. They'll do stuff just to increase ski resort snowpack, or to fill up a reservoir at a hydro dam for hydrological electricity. And then also in New Zealand, especially, it's public that they spray these herbicides and insecticides on forests. Yeah, it's, I think, similar. It's similar to glyphosate, but it's called another name over there, like N140 or something like that. And then over here, they do spray herbicides and whatnot airily, but publicly. Like that's actually like glyphosate in aerosol sprays is a public thing, you know. But in the constituents of the really high aerosols that are being used for the solar dimming and the weather engineering and whatnot, I haven't seen any evidence that there's necessary glyphosate all the way up in that. But I wouldn't be shocked. And finding out that it's an adjuvant and jabs is just shocking and disgusting. And it's
always
almost
been
everywhere
in there.
now.
Aluminum's been in vaccines from the very beginning.
Well, I mean, the glyphosate being an adjuvant, that's just...
I didn't know they were putting that in vaccines.
It's wild, yeah. It's used as an adjuvant in some of the vaccines, which I thought was just like, how can they get away with that? But people don't really grasp, you know, oh, we need this adjuvant. Well, might as well just put in all this toxic load. The vaccine story is also very, very sad and criminal. And they just use fear to push people into these scenarios.
Yeah, it's a sad but long-term issue. And, I think one thing COVID's done is wake a lot of people up, people that would have never, ever even, they would have thought people like you and I were absolutely crazy before COVID. Now, there's been enough people that have had family members die, seen, turbo cancers take people out, and things that just, were so obvious that you like, okay, something's very wrong here. We've been lied to, and people start digging, and then you got a tremendous amount of military people that were kicked out of the military because they were smart enough to ask questions and wouldn't do it. The Navy SEALs right here in San Diego sued the Navy and the government because found out that the vaccines were causing so much harm and didn't want to do it. But anyhow, I actually have the lawsuit. Friend of mine got a hold of the whole documentation of it, and I have it right in my laptop demonstrating why they were going through this. So there's enough people inside the military that have enough intelligence and common sense to start investigating this. There's so many people that are, shall we say, the wool is being pulled off the eyes, which leads me to my next question. I did read, I don't know if it was on Children's Health Defense or somewhere, but I did read that one state in the United States has made it illegal for geoengineering or spraying in their skies. I can't remember which state it was. I think it was one of the kind of states that you don't talk about much, like Wyoming or Arkansas or something like that. But I wish I could remember which state it was. Have you heard of any positive changes through activism, through lawsuits? Is there enough waking up at levels where change can be made that somebody's stepping in on any level?
I wanted to look it up because it's been a handful of states, but we've got Kentucky.
There you go, Kentucky.
Tennessee also.
Tennessee too, yeah.
Yeah, and then Florida has just now passed one. Arizona just as well passed one. So Kentucky, Arizona, Florida, Tennessee. And to answer your question, sadly, these bills don't hold teeth. So when they first passed it in Tennessee, people were really excited. And they were like, on this day, it's going to stop because they're going to be held liable. But the bill, what the bill, so I'm actually working with a senator out of New Jersey and also some legislators in Idaho to draft bills. And the senator in New Jersey is very cool and awake to the whole New World Order and everything. But we're all in agreement that these bills, they don't hold enough teeth because there should be a committee with a budget to like track these things. And then they should be given like, some sort of badge to be able to investigate. And then these bills need way more teeth. The one that's being introduced in Idaho is so vague. It said if they spray for solar radiation management, so already it's like, what if they're spraying for something else? Then they can be given a misdemeanor. It's like, in Idaho, a little nug of cannabis is a felony,
Right.
and you're telling me a crime against humanity it doesn't say how much or anything. They could be doing it all year for 20 years, and then they could be given. And then who's going to give them this misdemeanor, and who's going to admit to actually having done it? It's a nice step. At first, I thought like this is not even good because it keeps people trusting the system. It keeps people passive. Oh, we don't have to rally. We don't have to rally. It's already been done. But then I started realizing it's giving people some fuel overseas. So in the UK especially, during the lockdowns, you're right. It's like as the darkness shows itself, the people are forced to see that there's light and dark. You can't show yourselves that much and then hide in the shadows again with your inversions and your like word magic and stuff. You've showed yourself. So now that the darkness has showed itself to such a degree, people are really asking questions and doing the work. And I was lucky and blessed to have made Frankenskies in 2017 because during the lockdowns, people had the opportunity to click and watch. Mm-hmm. It was already on BitChute, Odyssey. It was on all the platforms. It didn't get pulled from different places when it got too big and whatever, but it's very readily available for the world. And it's been seen by about 100 million people now. It's having a viral. Thank you. It's going viral in other languages, and it got dubbed professionally in Czech and Romanian, and I'm finding it over there with millions of views and what have you. It's really taking off. What happened with the lockdowns, what I believe in the UK is it's a tight-knit country where they talk and they're used to going to the pubs and talking and they're used to having 9 to 5s where they can't look at the sky all day. And if you take these things away and people already didn't trust the monarchy, the queen and whatnot, people started to really wake up to geoengineering. And I can feel the pulse because I'm one of the main geoengineering activists in the world. And out of the blue, all these people have started contacting me. So last year I went and helped host the first anti-geoengineering rally in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and then the second one in Glasgow. And now every month, weather permitting, there's a group in Scotland that hosts a chemtrail protest. It had never happened before. I just gave a presentation in Wales on geoengineering and chemtrails. Multiple groups have sprouted up in England, and now I've gone over to Bexhill, which is in South England, and interviewed someone for my sequel, Frankenskies 2, an author I'm talking about, Neil McRae. He wrote a book about net zero, exposing the agenda and what have you. And now, because of all the momentum and all the talk and all the people waking up, I'm actually hosting I live in Oregon on the west coast of the United States. I'm hosting a massive anti-chemtrail rally protest on the 21st of June in London in Hyde Park. And the idea is it's summer solstice in the UK on the 21st of June, and it's the longest day of sunshine of the year. And the powers that be want to dim the sun, block the sun, and push the geoengineering, solar dimming agenda. So we're going to celebrate the sun on the longest day of the year and begin our annual protests. Because, and I'm almost done, people ask, what can be done? What can be done? What can be done? We'll take a page out of the book from Monsanto activists. There was a time when we didn't really know about GMO or Monsanto, and this is 15 years ago, but activists got involved. And at the time, Monsanto was played really dirty, and some people even lost their lives, sadly, because Monsanto was really trying to snuff out the truth. But the truth is like a lion. All you have to do is let it out of its cage, and it does the work. And Monsanto wasn't able to spot shoot all those fires of awakening, and March Against Monsanto was able to form. In 2013, May 25th, 2013, March Against Monsanto formed and had 400 simultaneous rallies in 400 cities around the world. And now every single year, they're about to be on their 12th year anniversary. Every year, every May, March Against Monsanto hits the streets, pounds the pavement, and raises the alarm on on Frankenfood, GMO, Monsanto, and all that. And now we know, and we have the right to choose. We have labels, legislation, all sorts of things. But had they not did what they did, we wouldn't even know what GMO was. And they would have gotten their evil claws into our food supply, Terminator seeds, glyphosate, all that nonsense. And now Bayer has bought up Monsanto for $66.6 billion. No coincidence there, 666. And now the name Monsanto doesn't even exist. But still, march against Monsanto continues on. And they've reached this kind of 100th monkey of awareness that now, generally speaking, people know what GMO is. I mean, not every single person, but it's labeled at my grocery store and people know, like, they don't want it and what have you, at least a lot of people. And I think that's where we need to be with the amount of awareness with geoengineering. So we will reach that 100th monkey. We just have to keep the concept of waking up to this idea alive. A lot of people are traumatized from it all.
Hello, and thank you to all of you for being here with me in Spirit Gym. Would you like to learn how to connect directly with your unconscious mind, soul, and highest self to gain guidance in your daily life and feel more grounded and spiritually connected? Are you ready to learn how to communicate with your soul and develop a language of direct communication that you can use to progressively develop your innate spiritual abilities such as clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, and intuition? Would you like a practical means of asking your own soul your deepest questions about all aspects of your life in general, or gain support from your soul in making critical decisions in your life? Would you feel safer asking important questions if you knew you weren't just using your ego mind, which is only about 5% of your consciousness, and were able to use all the consciousness within yourself? Well, if you've answered yes to any of these questions, then I have a very special offer for you. This August and September, I'll be offering my Tarot for Soul Guidance training program, in which I share specific methods of using tarot as a functional language to communicate directly with your soul as an online training program so that anyone can learn and practice in the comfort of their own home. I have deeply studied and practiced tarot for 10 years. Additionally, I have been working directly with my soul for my own guidance and to support others in their healing and spiritual journey and growth for over 20 years. I have taught thousands of my students and numerous clients and patients to connect to and get guidance directly from their soul using a range of approaches, including the use of tarot. I have not only seen people's lives and sense of trust in themselves improve dramatically in just a few months, I've received amazing feedback from each person that engaged these practices. Tarot for Soul Guidance is an online workshop specifically designed to make learning more enjoyable, easier, and give you specific practices you can work with between training sessions. This allows you to develop your skills in a step-by-step format and be able to ask all your questions so you feel grounded and confident in your Tarot for Soul Guidance practice. You will not only receive a comprehensive PDF manual with numerous diagrams for easier comprehension, but a series of video lessons that cover each of the major archetypes of tarot to support and reinforce your learning and practice. Tarot for Soul Guidance will be conducted online over 7 consecutive Fridays, starting August 8th and ending September 19th, for a total of 28 hours of training. All sessions will be recorded, so if you can't make a session for any reason, you can study and practice when it fits your schedule, and you can email me your questions and I will answer them in the upcoming online session, which is also recorded. There are many step-by-step developmental practices you will learn so that by the time you finish the 28-hour program, you'll be proficient in your practice of using tarot for soul guidance. You'll have a language for intimate connection with your soul for daily guidance, and I will teach you how to use tarot as a means of getting guidance and support from your soul in any aspect of your life, including how to gain an understanding of your future and what you may need to prepare for, how to conduct a daily reading and learn ways to best manage yourself to be in harmony with your highest intentions for yourself and others, how to gain information and guidance on how to make important decisions in your life, ways you can support others through soul-guided tarot communication, and how to progressively deepen your spiritual connection to your unconscious soul and highest self as a legitimate daily spiritual practice you can use anytime, anywhere. To find out more about the course and to register, go to paulchek.com/events/tarot. That's paulchek.com/events/tarot. If you are ready to learn to use your unconscious to its potential, deepen your connection to your soul and highest self, have a legitimate spiritual practice, and get support to live your dreams and be the person you came to the world to be, meet and learn others truly interested in being the best they can be and growing spiritually with them, then this workshop is for you. I look forward to seeing you in the training. Once again, to learn more and register, go to paulchek.com/events/tarot. That's paulchek.com/events/tarot. Can't wait to see you there. It's an amazing practice. I love it and use it every day. I'd like to just dive a little deeper into the concept of the genocide mission. You know, Bill Gates' father was the head of the United States' genocide project, and a lot of people don't know that. You know, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and many others. You know, there's many books about it. I've had James Tunney on my podcast several times, who's written many books about this, showing the entire history of the whole genocide movement. And it's well over 100 years old, and it comes from the very most wealthy groups of people in the world. I'm just curious if you've found anything in your own investigations. What do you feel their motives are, and what's driving them to literally wipe out a massive amount of the population? What do they think they're trying to achieve? I mean, one thing that I've heard Bill Gates say is one of his motives for it, and I've got articles going all the way back to 2010 of him saying they were going to use vaccines to reduce the population. For example, I got an article read out of a newspaper in Hawaii I have in my library in, I believe, 2010 or 2009, where he's laying it right on the fucking table, and people just seem to be so dumb they didn't even pick it up. I watched him give a TED talk, and he said right in front of the audience, we're going to use vaccines to reduce the population. And not one single person raised their hand or said, wait a minute, what exactly are you saying here? I mean, they just sat there like dumb animals. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you people? And so his argument is we can't produce enough food to feed the rising population, which I've said on many podcasts is completely and utterly false. I recommend people read the book Farming, I think it's Farming for 40 Centuries by F.H. King. And he was a professor of agriculture. And the book was published, I believe, in 1910. And he was investigating how China, Korea, and Japan could produce massive amounts more food than we were. And he went and did a multi-year investigation, and he showed that the average Chinese farmer was producing more food on 1 2/3 acre than the American farmers could produce on 40 acres. And he showed they did it using organic farming principles, and said that if we farmed organically, we could pretty comfortably carry 11.5 billion people on the planet without running into trouble. And so we're a long ways from 11 billion, and we got people like Bill Gates justifying, you know, GMOs and all the crap he's up to based on the premise that we're going to run out of food, which is absolutely a lie, not to mention the fact that it's completely and utterly destroying the soil of the planet, which was already in trouble from commercial farming for, God, a long time. I got a book published in 1961 or 63 in my library showing that at that time, over 60% of the world's topsoils were already so severely diminished that we could have a severe problem heading our way due to a lack of topsoil. But then we have organic and biodynamic and regenerative farmers that have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt you can regenerate the topsoil fairly efficiently within about 3 years using organic farming principles. So the question, again, to restate it, is what have you found is their motives behind this? What do they actually believe, and what do they think that they have to do, and why?
Well, Paul, the answer to that is it depends on who you're talking to.
I'm talking to
what
you.
I mean, what I mean is, and as an activist, we have to play our part in meeting our audience where they're at. And that means, as seed planters, not everyone's ready to hear, you know, the like doctorate level truth. Like if someone's in kindergarten, they're not ready for calculus, you know what I mean? But everyone's on their path towards awakening. That's why we're here as spiritual beings, is to have an elevation of consciousness. For some people, they're not ready to hear soul, like that they're trying to control the destiny of our souls, and that it's a very much a satanic agenda, and it's transhumanism. Singularity is their end game. And why transhumanism singularity? Because, like I said earlier, the powers that be, their bloodlines, they know they've done evil in the past, their family has at least, and the plan, all the while, maybe because they've engaged with different dimensional lower vibrational beings or demons, or Aleister Crowley's channeling demons, and they got this game plan from gray demonic entity like communication. Who knows exactly how they knew to start fluoridating the pineal gland, to calcify the pineal gland, and disrupt the spiritual evolution of humanity. But the end game is to bypass karma, because if the cycle of Earth continues and repeats itself like it's supposed to, and there's an elevation of consciousness and physicality rises to a vibration beyond physical form, all these horrible people on Earth will become dung beetles, and they'll have to start all over again. And they think that they can hijack the entire system by creating a dystopian reality. I think they're trying to create their very own timeline, actually, through CERN and what have you. But the goal is through 5G and the GMO and the chemtrails and the jabs and all that. There's all these different agendas that are different tentacles of the same octopus or hydra, what have you. It's all to push depopulation. Well, it's all to push an attack on fertility. So when people can't find, because the 5G carrier wave is designed to be very absorptive, and the size of it really matters here. So a child that is conceived, born, and raised in a 5G environment, because it's been bombarded by a millimeter-sized carrier wave its entire life, when it was developing its reproductive organs, it likely was sterilized, sadly. And that's why Bill Gates' dad is behind Planned Parenthood and all this sort of stuff. They're trying to reduce the population through covert means, not through like a massive war or offing people with jabs, the vaccines that kill people, but actually just attacking people's fertility, like in Handmaid's Tale or Children of Men or other films that are predictive programming fall in fertility, a drastic fall in fertility. I've gone in a deep meditation and seen a Time magazine headline that says, "Live forever to save humanity." And the idea will be, we're going to transfer consciousness now, and we've got this new technology where, likely through freaking Elon Musk or something, but there'll be transfer of consciousness technology where, because reproduction has become so limited and children can't be born the same anymore, and you want to keep humanity going, you can just cash in on your fear of death, because everyone's afraid of that. Let's cash in on this fear that's been implanted in society, because true spirituality is not these dogmatic religions that make you fearing your sins and fearing dying. Death is a rebirth, regenerative process where you're being refined and polished, like a polishing of a stone or coal being turned into a diamond or what have you. And we signed up for this. Like the game of Earth is for souls to be able to come, I firmly believe, and shed their shadows and their murky parts and elevate their consciousness to a higher vibration, and to take that home from wherever they came. I firmly believe that's the process of Earth. So by creating a dystopian transhumanism reality where people are starting to transfer their consciousness, which you can't do really. You can't take consciousness, which is designed for your higher self to embed in the human DNA, which is sacred. You can't turn it into robots and then transfer your soul over to that. If you know about Rudolf Steiner or other... Yeah, I love his work. I've probably got more books than anybody. Definitely more books than any bookstore. Or I've got about 40 Rudolf Steiner books, and I've gotten really deep into his study even on bees, and his lectures are quite amazing. But what's fascinating is he was trying to very cryptically, that's why his books are so hard to read, he was cryptically warning humanity of this time. He was warning us of this time. And by the time because he was a 33-degree Freemason, and by the time, and he's written books on secret societies and all this, and Ahrimanic energy and what have you, and that's what we're dealing with right now. By the time it was realized what he was doing, it was a bit too late because he had gotten so many things published, but they had to still take him out and poison him and stop him from still spilling the beans. But this dystopian transfer of consciousness is what their end game is. But if I was talking to most of the world, I would say greed. I would say there's a weather derivatives market now, just like how you can buy oil or timber or pork bellies. You can also invest in weather, like whether it's going to rain on a certain place and what have you. And this is so farmers can hedge their crops on, different catastrophes and what have you. It makes sense, but not when the weather is controlled, right?
No,
so
yeah.
the powers that be can control where it's going to rain, where it's not, gobble up farmland and consolidate with this big ag, big pharma, takeover to get rid of all of the small farmers, to create a class of society where there's uber rich and then a slave class.
It's a Hunger Games kind of strategy.
Exactly, just like it. And why do they create movies like that anyways?
To predictively program you. You really, I think, would be fascinated if you listened to episode 250 of my podcast called Lucifer, Christ, Ahriman. I've been studying Steiner for about 30 years. I've got 185 of his books in my library.
Oh, good job.
His much of his teachings are incorporated into the Chek Institute's training programs. And I did a review of all Steiner's warnings. I gave a comprehensive overview of the construction of the human energy field systems and how that relates to Steiner's warnings and what's going on in the world. It's a 5-hour special episode. It was my most listened to podcast in 2023. So Lucifer, Christ,
beautiful.
Ahriman, episode 250. Anyone listening, if you haven't listened to it, you want to hear exactly what Rudolf Steiner said we were going to be experiencing now and why it was important from a spiritual perspective and what we can do about it from a spiritual perspective. That's what that episode's all about. My next question for you is not something that I planned to ask you, but I feel based on the conversation, it's important to ask. That is Donald Trump. He has done a lot of great stuff since he got in. Doge has been very revealing. To me, Donald Trump is a Trump, and he's a tricky guy, and he's, as you know, doing a lot of work with Elon Musk, which concerns me because Elon's another double-edged sword. I'm very grateful for the positive things he's done, but simultaneously, people forget he's the one that signed the deal to go in bed with Pfizer to begin putting the United States and government in bed with the vaccine manufacturers from the beginning. As soon as he became president the first time, he stopped the EPA's ability to control the toxicity of large regions. He opened up national forests for drilling. He removed the protection of national preserves all over the United States and is now doing the same thing. And he's opening up the logging industry when people don't realize that you can make anything out of hemp that you can out of the trees, but we need trees for a myriad of reasons, oxygen being one of them. I'm just curious, where do you feel Donald Trump falls into this whole picture? And what are your thoughts now? Hello to all of you. I hope you're enjoying the podcast as much as I am. My buddy Aubrey Marcus recently visited me and he brought me a nice little gift. It's called Energy, and he was confident I'd really like it. He knows I'm skeptical about such things. It sat on my counter for about a month before I tried it because I was waiting for a day when I felt I needed a boost to get some work done. Well, that day finally came. I'd been working long hours and not getting enough sleep, but needed to conduct a 3-hour Sangha with my Spirit Gym community members. I thought, well, today's a good day to try the correct energy supplement that Aubrey left me. I did, and I was blown away with how smooth, opening, and energizing correct energy made me feel. My mind was crystal clear. I didn't have any of the typical caffeine buzz energy products generally give at all. Within about 10 minutes of taking correct energy, the word that kept going through my mind was, wow, I didn't think I'd find an energy boost product that could possibly work better for me than Update, but thanks to Aubrey, I did. Correct Energy provides the alchemical magic of decaf green tea, decaf green coffee, affinity paraxanthine, and other supportive ingredients. Correct Energy is third-party tested to be sure that all ingredients meet the highest safety standards for pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, BPA, BPS, and has no glyphosate. Correct Energy is smooth, effective, and clean, and you can feel it too. If you need to be sharp for a meeting, want to have a little extra juice to play with your kids, or have some extra push for a workout, I can assure you you won't be disappointed with Correct Energy. Correct Energy comes in easy-to-carry and store packets. After using Correct Energy, I got none of the letdowns so common with caffeine-based products and other energy products. If I wasn't truly impressed, and my friends and Penny have been as well, I certainly wouldn't be sharing Correct Energy with you now. If you want the most effective energy boost supplement I've ever found, you'll definitely want to try Correct Energy for when you need a little extra boost to optimize your day. To get your supply of Correct Energy, go to korrectlife.com/spiritgym. That's korrectlife.com/spiritgym. Enjoy Correct Energy.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially for where we're at right now. The Trump administration, in conjunction with the Musk bit, is the entire thing seems to be an attack on discernment. Okay. So people want to believe it's called hopium. There's this drug of hopium where, oh, well, someone's going to do it for me. It takes away the individual responsibility if someone's going to save you. And no one's going to save us but ourselves. I believe politics to be like a total setup. So the Biden administration got everyone upset about certain things, like the they, them, and the drag queens in the schools and whatnot. And then there was going to be a conservative backlash, of course, but this is all planned in these evil think tanks, and the Trump-Musk combination is a Trojan horse to initiate, to really push this Agenda 2030 New World Order. And, right when they got into office, they developed, or they committed $500 billion towards this AI cancer individualized cancer vaccine,
which is more mRNA bullshit.
Yeah, but let's take a big step back. We're going to fund AI to get to intimately know humans to that degree that they can come up with individualized medicine. That's not going to end well. They're giving too much resources and information and whatnot to this slippery slope technology that we have not yet to wrap our heads around. And as AI becomes more pervasive, it's very likely that, I think it's all planned, like CIA planned, and likely AI will get so complex that AI will start having its own bank accounts and hacking systems and whatnot. And then there will have to be an internet overhaul where, to get online, we'll have to prove that we're a human. And then that'll involve like some sort of biometric scanning, and that'll start the whole digitization of everything, where we have some sort of retinal scan or QR code that's attached to our medical records, that's attached to our digital currency, and all this because AI has gotten so smart that we have to prove who we are because it's just gotten out of hand. But this is all problem, reaction, solution scenarios.
Yeah,
I don't trust the Trump thing very much at all, but it's genius, because who would really step up to buck or say no to the New World Order? It would be the armed right-wing Americans. The lefties aren't going to do it. They've become so pacified, and they're just focused on certain ideologies, what have you, but they're not going to be armed and rally together to stop the New World Order. So they had to pacify both sides through the indoctrination and programming and whatnot. And it's really like, if you look at the assassination attempt, or even a lot of things like Elon Musk shooting a car into space and then saying it's so fake that it must be real, or even them throwing a helicopter on Mars and all of a sudden saying we can fly helicopters on Mars. These are all slippery slopes attacks on discernment. Now, our cognitive discernment and critical thinking skills, it's basically been bred out of us through the public educational system, through fact checkers, through just our normal, like, going to school and being told what to think and how to feel and not how to think and how to like analyze information. But this, I believe, if you've seen the movie / documentary Idiocracy, the powers that be want to get us from A to Z, where we're just like complete, like, not thinking for ourselves, slaves. And, oh yeah, you want to be transhuman. And of course, Elon Musk is having now like 12 children, and he's got children with Grimes, who has sold her soul as an art installation. So she's very satanic, and they've got children with robotic names already, 3 of them. Elon Musk just had a child with the Neuralink executive, and these children will definitely be poster children for the transhumanism revolution. And while we're all worried about, well, trans rights, and, you know, they have the right to say that they're going to be a cat. So if they have the rights to do that, they might as well have the right to say they're going to be a robot, and what bathrooms are the robots going to use and whatnot. The entire system is being hijacked for this, like, takeover, which Rudolf Steiner said it was a split between materialism and spirituality. And in this world we live in now, we still have a balance of materialism and spirituality, and we can unplug and go out into nature, and we can get off of our devices. But when they start doing the biodigital convergence and start implanting things into people and telling us it's something that we need, and convincing people that they have to get robotic implants to, say, go on a SpaceX mission to Mars, and then they actually have memory implants where they maybe never even went to Mars. This is the movie Total Recall all over again, where people won't be actually going to Mars. But it's overall, so, like, long story short, the Trump administration is an attack on people's spiritual guidance systems. It's an attack on our gut instincts. And if you just continue to take authority as your truth and trust that he's going to drain the swamp and make America healthy again while pushing mRNA vaccines and not doing what they say, these are politicians still.
And eating at McDonald's constantly.
Yeah, people don't grasp that even RFK, sorry to say, is a politician and will say things to get into office and then not do them afterwards, just like all the other politicians do. But people have such hopium for these figureheads. And yes, we were very traumatized by Biden. You know, he definitely did a number on everybody. But still, the world is getting played and divided. And even the alternative truth community, where I reside, it's heavily inundated with Q, and Trump is taking down the swamp from the within, and all these things that we're very heavily divided on the topic of who Trump is, whereas I can't believe it, because these are people that are aware of the truths across the board. How can they not see this one?
It is a complex situation. I don't know if you saw the documentary that Aubrey Marcus and Ben Stewart put out not too long ago, but it really investigated Trump and the political system, showed that there is not 2 parties. It's a uni-party system, and that it's a whole theater. It's a puppet show. It always has been. But and we know from JFK's death and others like Martin Luther King and many, that once you get enough steam going to wake people up, they just get rid of you. Or if you go against the New World Order military-industrial complex like our JFK did, then you're gone. Personally, I'd rather die a hero's death than die of aluminum in my brain. But it is something that I think people really need to do more work to investigate. I'm really grateful for people like Whitney Webb, because she's such a thorough journalist that she really exposes a lot of stuff. Which brings me to a question I'd like to ask you. You know, there's a bit of a race going on, because if you look at how many people are waking up to this thing, and once you kind of get the wool off your eyes around COVID and you realize, okay, there is a conspiracy that is real, that we are being poisoned, and, you know, millions and millions of people have woken up. You know, we have the real Anthony Fauci. We've got Control Oligarchs by Seamus Bruner. We got a load of books out there that are just unveiling the truth. It seems like there's a real race going on between their agenda now and how to combat the awakening to consciousness of what's really going on. And of course, that's going to create activism and resistance. And So I guess my question for you is, what do you see? How do you see this playing out? Because it is a real race between them being able to implement their agenda, which requires enough people to be asleep for it to happen, and everybody waking up to what's really going on, and then, saying we can't do this. And we've now got a much higher awareness of the importance of small farms. We've got more anti-vaxxers than ever. We've got more people that realize they're being tricked. They tried to, stop the spread of information through censorship, but people like Joe Rogan and many of the big podcasters and all of us that were telling the truth really threw a monkey into that plan. And Trump and Musk have seemed to have actually made it more of a free speech environment. So this is why I say the whole Trump thing is very, very complex. It's like a hall of mirrors. It's hard to really get a read on all this. So my question in a nutshell is, where do you think we're at with the race between awakening and real activism and stopping some of this shit versus them getting their plan through?
Well, that's a great question. And people ask me often, why? And people are very downtrodden by it, like, we're under attack, what can be done? And there's one very important takeaway here. Yes, we're under attack from almost every angle. Like, I can't look around the room without seeing it, with the microplastics or the clothing being tainted with, polyester, or the fluoride in the water, the GMO food, the medical mafia. I mean, like the seed oils, just food, seed oils alone. I mean, you've got the chemtrails. Why are we being attacked from every single angle? Well, it's obviously a fear-based approach, because they don't want us coming into the realization that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that we're on an evolutionary path towards spirit man, as Steiner would call it. Yeah. So we are evolving, and the stars are aligning, and they are actually scared to death. It's hard for us to grasp that, because it seems like they're covering every angle. And how could we combat a multi-trillion-dollar whatever military industrial complex? But each one of us has the ability to have this opening of a heart, like heart opening, that takes humanity's DNA to the next level. And that's what they are absolutely terrified of. So I think that as we wake up, our DNA activates. I do know there's a divine plan here, and the powers that be know that. So they'll continue to pull off all the stops, but there will be a tipping point. And this is where it gets really interesting, because I think that there's tech to monitor frequency, and the goal is to keep humanity in a limited bandwidth, like stuck on one radio station, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they do that through different mechanisms, through the food, through frequency warfare, even through having 5G towers and next rad stations and what have you. There's a very concerted effort to control the frequency of humanity, but I don't think that using technology created by humans, that are in God's image, is going to prevent God's plan. So as elevation of consciousness continues to happen, which it's being triggered by the darkness doing its evil deeds, because as they try to stop the awakening, they show themselves, they show their colors, which is actually adding to it and creating more of a snowball avalanche effect, mm-hmm. right? Yep. So you're trying to create a landslide by adding boulders to it that are even making it stronger. You know what I mean? Maybe better metaphors out there. But what I see during this administration, because the Trump Musk combo, I do believe is this Trojan horse. They have a much bigger agenda at hand, to play out. I feel like we will see a very massive dystopian kind of psyop hijacking attempt, a major worldwide event like the lockdowns, like COVID. I think that COVID and free speech on X and Twitter, what have you, I think a lot of this has just been a data mining. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So intuitively, when we were going through all the lockdowns and whatnot, and then all of a sudden the word anal swabs came out, I was like, that's quantum computing. They want a feedback loop. They're going to see what people say to that, because it was just is something so extreme that they wanted to see our reaction. Like, how are people going to be like, I'm going to go out and protest now? Or some people would say, you know, where do I bend over for this, right? And what kind of numbers and how many people are still going to wear the mask 4 years later and what have you. It's all quantum computing. That's probably like D-Wave engaging with demons or something as well, you know, because we're dealing with some like really interesting, dark, deep stuff. And they're trying to predict the future and predict future outcomes and what have you, but they don't know the power of the human spirit. And as they do more evil bidding, there's a call for higher dimensional beings to come give balance to this hijacking, because free will is being compromised, and that is a no-no. The rules are being broken. So then Earth gets to call in the big dogs, and there's no stopping the elevation of consciousness. But I do think that maybe some earthquakes, tidal waves, these extreme events that we're seeing, like fires and hurricanes and whatnot, those are very small. I do think that humanity will see like a massive maybe blackout. The aurora borealis, for instance, being everywhere now, all of a sudden northern lights are usually just in the north, and we're seeing them in Florida and what have you. And then if you learn that you can imitate this with HARP, chemtrail, excitement of the atmosphere technology by utilizing intersecting radio waves and chemtrail aerosol constituents, that maybe they're creating this narrative to create a Coriolis like blackout event, to create some sort of catastrophe on Earth, to steer humanity more towards materialism and away from spirituality, as Rudolf Steiner said. So the answer to your question is, I think the future is very bright, but I think the powers that be know that. And so then I think they're going to try to pull out all the stops, like they have in their back pocket, like fake alien invasion and all these other things, you know. And I think it's all in divine order, though. Like the more they try, the more they're going to show themselves, and the more that every common Joe is going to see, oh, wait, there's a battle of good and evil on Earth. Well, if there's this polarized duality, what side do I land on? And then people get to go internal and say, well, I'm good. Look at me. I'm actually a really good human being. And there's evil. Wow. Well, I'm good. I must be here to fight that evil. And it becomes a whole spiritual world when you see that. And that's the awakening of consciousness. So as much as they try, I think they're only going to spur the activation, you know, and light the fire that we all needed. So they'll be the spark that they never wanted to be.
Organifi have just come out with their brand new Creatine Cherry Chews, a sports gummy designed to enhance performance and recovery. Containing the highest quality creatine monohydrate sourced from Germany, together with Vita Cherry, a tart cherry extract known for its antioxidant properties, Organifi's Creatine Cherry Chews are free from additives, sweeteners, or fillers, and taste amazing. They are the perfect exercise enhancer because your body uses the creatine for energy immediately. Take 2 gummies before or after your workout, and most people will feel the difference after 2 weeks of constant use. Used regularly, creatine can increase endurance and muscle strength, help reduce muscle cell damage, assist with recovery, and support cognitive function and focus. To try Organifi's Creatine Cherry Chews and save 20% off your order, go to Organifi.com/Chek20 and use the promo code Chek20. That's Organifi.com/CHEK20, and the code for your 20% discount is Chek20.
Yeah, Steiner says the function of Ahriman, which is really the god of machines and materialism, is to take us so deep into a materialistic existence that we realize how soulless it is and ultimately utterly reject it. And then we will be clear that we need to engage spiritual teaching, spiritual practices, and spiritual evolution. So, but he does make it clear it's no one knows if the Earth will survive the journey. We're in a real initiation, and people often do not make it through real initiations. Study tribal initiations around the world, and a lot of people die in them, or they wouldn't be taken seriously. And I think, when you look at the education system and the orientation toward materialism and kind of just to give one example, the stupidity of the black hole theory and the severe gap between the findings of quantum physics and general relativity theory, the gap is, I think it's 10 to the like 150 zeros or something. It's so fucking massive. It's a joke. And it's obvious that, we're being lied to about our history and a myriad of other things. It just seems like it's a really good time for people I tell people the most important thing you can do is use your heart to feel what you know, because it's so complicated and most people's mental structure or ego is so narrowly programmed that you have to get to your heart and ask yourself, what would love do now? What would love do now to protect the soil and to protect nature, which is, our mother, really. We can't get by without Mother Nature. And how do we protect each other? And how do we engage the darkness and the beings that are involved in this without becoming just like them? That's one of my common inner challenges is like, the soldier in me has no problem coming up with solutions for dealing with the Bill Gateses of the world and the people that are harming people, because that's what I was trained to do, is to protect my country against enemies, foreign and domestic. And, I went through a lot of training to be able to recognize these types of threats and what military strategy is and how to deal with it. But unfortunately, that was using, force. So one of the big challenges of our day is how do we deal with threats of this magnitude and people of this level of darkness, greed, deception, and satanic orientation without becoming just like them? Because it's very easy to get righteous. And then the next thing you know, you've got a Christian crusade or a jihad in the name of God, and we're right back where we started. So, these kinds of challenges are really like a filtration system through which the psyche has to emerge at a higher level of consciousness, or you cannot confront a problem of that magnitude. You can't use childlike thinking to address real adult problems that require a level of complexity, wisdom, and depth that's quite rare. And I think it's also an important time for the wise elders of the world to make an effort to share more wisdom, teachings, and guidance with people, because, we give piles of airtime to the greatest idiots on the planet. Of the many people I've had on my podcast, like Sean O'Leary, for example, a 50 years a Christian priest who got kicked out for teaching real spirituality, wrote the book Setting God Free, which is just mind-blowingly good and is a phenomenal guide for human beings, and many others I've had on the podcast. They need more airtime because we need more positive, spiritually grounded influences to help people navigate the real inner crisis that goes with how do you deal with darkness of this magnitude. I'd just like to invite you to share your thoughts in that regard.
Well, you can't, in this situation, which I've also given a lot of thought as yourself, as you have done, you can't fight evil with evil. That's actually what they want. They want us getting karma and then having to, face it and not being able to elevate consciousness.
Well, they also want a reason to use more force.
Well, of course. Yeah. And that's exactly what they would like, is to be able to throw us into a martial law and never, go back. But like you said, you have to start experiencing how to feel things with your heart. And in that opening of your heart, you cultivate discernment. Discernment is not something that you get overnight. And I've especially started to watch as AI starts to make AI generated content. We've got artwork and videos and you name it. I mean, by the time this is over, you're not going to be able to see the difference between the two. There's a Steiner, since we're talking about him a bit, there's a meditation book that I got by him. And the meditation book by Steiner that I got, it asks you to get real seeds and fake seeds, one made of like plastic or porcelain and one actual seed, but have them be identical, and to meditate on these two things. And eventually your spirit and your gut and your heart can feel the life in the one seed because it has a whole
vibration
life in it.
It's got an energy field.
Yeah, and a library of information. And the other one is just plastics materials made by man. But through opening up and cultivating our spiritual guidance system and our discernment, we'll be able to feel things that are made by AI, even if they're exact replicas. Mona Lisa by AI, Mona Lisa by Da Vinci, right? Please tell me it's Da Vinci who did that. So then, I'm right? Yeah. So then you've got the two side by side, and eventually we'll be able to literally feel and see it with our spiritual systems, like our third eye and what have you. And that's how we're going to win this war, is by going within, by seeing all the lies. And I've asked myself, why so many lies? Why impregnate children with black holes, space shuttle, dinosaurs, all this nonsense, evolution, all these things? Like 5-year-olds are so heavily indoctrinated. And I've been hanging out with some kids recently, and they don't know the word submarine. They don't know the word photosynthesis. They don't know the word team, but they do know all about stegosauruses, triceratops, black holes, Saturn. They know all these things about meteors going to hit the Earth any moment, where we could all die from asteroid attack. It's like, wow, why? It's because we are very, very powerful spiritual beings of resonance, of frequency. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to elevate our vibration and activate our other, spiritual powers, let's call them, where we become more cognizant, telepathic, and
voyances.
To a point where we can actually see through lies, and we become unfoolable because we're resonant beings, and things that don't resonate with us are lies, and they just bounce off of us. But by having us believe lies, like believe has lie right in the middle of it, and so people become bogged down by resonant frequencies of falsehoods, and so you can't rise to your highest potential outcome if you, in your consciousness, believe all these things that aren't true. So by bogging people down with falsehoods, you make them more easily controlled. And as we shed these falsehoods and elevate to the vibration of truth, on that frequency of truth, it's like gaining access to the Akashic records. Other truths are there and become self-evident, and then we can start to really evolve. And that's our way out of here. It's not by picking up the pitchfork and doing it the old way and creating karma and making violence. It's by going within and activating our other chakra systems, our heart, and activating our DNA and aligning to our higher selves and showing people the way to light that torch and guide people out of the light in that spiritual way. And the materialism wants you to think that it's all going to be like physical wars and gun battles, and it's not.
And I also know from my own investigations and observations and what sits in my house every day, which is my children, there's a lot of kids coming into the world in the last, I would say, at least 20 years, but more so in the last 10 years. And right now, there's a lot of children being born that are very evolved souls that are on a different vibrational level. I've got a 45-year-old, 4-year-old grandson, a 5-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old son. And my 5-year-old and 9-year-old, they blow our mind at how fast they learn and how, like my little daughter, Zoe, you don't want to get yourself embarrassed trying to beat this girl at a card game, because I swear she can see right through the card. She'll have a bunch of cards laying face down, and she'll say, that's a 12, and she'll turn it over and it'll be a 12, and like, it's like, I've got plenty of evidence. I'm an educator. I've studied Steiner extensively, many others as well. So I have enough depth of observation to know what I'm looking at. I'm also clairvoyant. So I see a lot of kids coming into the earth sphere right now that are armed with a greater depth of perception than the people that are here, except for those that have done a lot of work to grow it through spiritual practices. So I think that, as we talked about earlier, there is a balancing of there always is a balancing of the forces of yin and yang, or dark and light. My point is, I think that there is some hope for the near future, because there are going to be I watched a video interview with a 13-year-old genius inventor who had already come up with free energy technologies and all sorts of stuff. And the guy was asking him what he thought about God and religion, and his answers were mind-blowingly good. I was cracking up. He was being very polite. Well, I got to be careful what I say here, but the kid was like already doing, cracking some of the most complex mathematical equations that even the top university professors can't do, and he's 13. So I feel very positive with what I see in the children. The question is, can we protect them from having their pineals turned into fossils and poisoning themselves, because so many of the parents of these kids don't realize what they're parenting. But I also trust that the same spirit that's bringing them in knows how to make it through the minefield, or why bother, right?
Yes, exactly. There's a divine order to it all. And you're right. The kids that are coming in now, especially over the past 5-10 years, they are so bright. You can see it right in them. And they catch on to things so fast. Dolores Cannon said that there was like a wave of souls being called to Earth. And these are likely souls that have already done the Earth thing. I believe that I have a theory that each star is actually a frequency of a previously ascended soul family of Earth. So I think that Earth goes through its process, and when it elevates and goes beyond physicality, and there's like an ascension where the souls go out, that blueprint is left in our sky, and there's like a star there. That's a soul family that's already ascended. Maybe I'm off, but it's just from...
Well, you might want to hear this. The Aboriginals have a saying: the stars are the campfires of our ancestors. If you haven't read the book Voices of the First Day by Robert Lawler, it's phenomenal. It's all about the Aboriginal culture. It's very deep and profound. I think you'd find that quite a potent experience to read that book. It's really beautiful and comprehensive, and Robert Lawler's an amazing writer and a very deep man.
Beautiful. I'll have to check that out. So maybe I'm not that far off, but I believe that souls have already come and done the Earth thing in previous versions of Earth, and those souls know how to lead the way. They've done it before. Like, it's ingrained in them. It is not just dialed into their DNA. They've done it, and they've been asked to come back to show us the way. And so this is what the third wave is from the Dolores Cannon studies. And these souls are coming back now, and they are ready to rock and roll. And they're going to show us exactly how to do it. And whether they're born into a ramen noodle, Cheeto-eating family or not, they're going to wake up the people around them and be that torch that shines the light, that changes the outcome. But what exactly is going to happen? Because the darkness knows that these souls are coming too. So they're going to try to, force medicate them and all sorts of stuff. But there's no stopping the evolution of consciousness. It is ingrained in every seed, in every molecule, in every person. And they want to push this whole scarcity, food shortages, but these are all lies. They're fabricated narratives to keep us thinking that we need to believe in GMOs, that we need to take authority as our truth. But really, we live in abundance. And when you start to realize the power of the seed, that just one seed can create a whole forest, there's so much power in just that. And we too are the seeds, but of the awakening of spirit. And that's why we're here. It's really unstoppable, but I think that it's going to be a wild roller coaster of a ride. So I encourage people to fasten their seatbelts. But the more that, like I said before, the more that the evil shows itself, people get activated and then become activists and find their divine calling. Not everyone before COVID really gave that much attention to it all because their regular lives were not being impacted. They weren't losing their livelihoods and having their businesses shut down and being forced to limit the oxygen through which they, their airflow. And they're handing out these blue medical masks. These are polytetrafluoroethylene, PTFE, lined masks, which is synthetic fluoride. These are surgical masks. They're not used to, prevent you from breathing in viruses anyways. Now people are huffing fluoride masks like when they lined up in front of my co-op, my organic grocery store, and there's an armed guard and the sign says entrance, and people are being handed these medical masks and people are willingly put them on while consenting to the entrance and staying in a trance. And then 4 years, 5 years later, they're still wearing masks. People are under a spell, but the spell is going to be broken. It is breaking. And it is being broken by the higher vibratory consciousnesses of people that are coming, or the people that are already here that are rising their vibration by realizing the truth of the world in which we live, which is not all rose-colored glasses, but don't let that get you down, because we live in such a fierce duality that the more darkness you see, that means there's that much more light here to realize as well.
Which brings up another point that I didn't have in the outline, but it really fits right here. And that's, we're in the third wave of a psychedelic revival, and millions of people all over the world are trampling into the jungles to do ayahuasca and doing DMT, and DMT seems to be flooding the streets like cocaine used to in the 80s. So I think, interestingly, there's a lot of history of the CIA really getting people like Timothy Leary and everybody else to spread psychedelics around because they thought it would pacify people so they wouldn't resist the kind of movement that we're talking about from the global elites. And so they wouldn't resist military efforts and stuff. They wanted to turn them into passive little cucumbers. But the problem is that, the effective use of plant medicines can awaken you to your soul, to your spirit, to God, to nature, to holism, and to many, many other very beautiful things. And countless is the number of people I've seen have major life conversions towards something much more beautiful and healthy through the effective use of plant medicine. So I think that's also one of Mother Nature's, little tricks in the tool chest is, hey, we have lots of ways to waking up sleeping souls. And so I think at an unconscious level, that may be why we're seeing this massive increase in plant medicine use all over the world. Unfortunately, it's creating a lot of problems, which I've podcasted on quite a lot. I've conducted over 1,000 plant medicine healing ceremonies in my career. So I have a lot of experience with that. But I just think that that's one of the X factors that's accelerating awakening on many levels. And I'm grateful that it's out there, although it needs to be used carefully, or it just can become as evil as any other drug.
Oh, I completely agree. And it's like when people start taking control of their own health, it's because a lot of the time, it's because people have a healing crisis of some sort. And then they start reading the labels and they're like, wait, I've been drinking engine oil my whole life. And maybe I should think about alkaline diet. And why did Dr. Sebi and Nipsey Hussle, who's making a documentary on Dr. Sebi, why did they die mysteriously? And alkaline. And people start to really chelation and, raw diet. And people start to really look at these things when they're forced. Not always. But it takes something. Maybe a loved one died, or maybe, the cat got cancer. Who knows? Whatever it is.
That's what I call that the pain teacher, by the way. When the pain teacher shows up, it's to quicken consciousness.
Exactly. And I see that happening through the spirituality right now. So just like people go through health crises, people are in a spiritual crisis right now where there's dark night of the soul, and people are maybe just by chance coming into a psilocybin dose or a combo ceremony or ayahuasca, or maybe they seeking it out. People seek these things out because they have this question, or their soul is steering them, or they're being guided, by their ancestors. But all of a sudden you get this kick in the face that you are an eternal spiritual being. And that starts to shift a lot in your world. Wow, death doesn't matter. And if I became an activist and I gave my life to activism, but I always wanted to play the piano, I'll get another chance, or I should lead a very righteous life. And everything that I do should be good and righteous. And I'm here in service to the consciousness of humanity, to combat evil, to show Satan, that God is, a higher force and that he should have done what he did or whatever. There's so many levels of awakening that happen by seeing that you are an eternal being. Me, I was living in San Diego in my early 20s. I thought I knew everything about everything, and I took a really massive hit of Salvia divinorum extract, like 70 times extract or something like that. They were selling at the head shops. I didn't think that I would blast off to another dimension and like literally question my own reality and time. Like time doesn't exist. I was like, I learned after I came back that there's no time, and that I do have a soul, and all these things. I think likely there's a lot of DMT in the ayahuasca, but it's a wild journey because ayahuasca as the spirit does not like to be burned and smoked. It likes to be prayed to, sang to, and drank in a tea through the right circumstances with with shaman and whatnot, and respected on her native land. And so burning her and diving deep, you're going to get a kick in the face, a big lesson. But that shifted my entire trajectory because I started realizing that not all those things in the material world are as important, even close to as important as I once thought they were. And what's more important is evolution of my spirit and realizing why I'm here and who I am, what I'm here to do. And I'm in service to a higher good is what I realized.
Yeah. I'm going to have to give you a guest pass to my Spirit Gym program. I think it's going to blow your mind. My next question is, a friend of mine who has some insider ties to Hollywood and Disney recently informed me that Disney hired a company and gave them an $8 billion contract to re-edit all their past movies and put crisscross patterns in the sky, and that the project is intended to persuade the public that clouds do and always have formed like trails in the sky. This suggests that some very powerful groups of people are working on engineering the perception of the masses to support the ongoing destruction of the planet and support manipulation of people based on global warming and all that goes with that concept from a geopolitical perspective. Do you know about this, and what are your thoughts about that?
I can't corroborate that information necessarily, but I do know that there are massive programs to indoctrinate people to normalize this. Like all throughout media, going back to the 80s and 90s, especially in modern day now, it's full on. It is in the children's books, it is in cartoons, it is in movies, it is in commercials. It's in even print advertisements. It's so full on in your face that before you've started to question it or talk to someone about watching the movie Frankenskies or questioning the lines in the sky, it's already been so in your face, normalized, that you think it's always been there and that it's nothing new. Are they going back? I've heard about Jaws, the movie Jaws, being edited and chemtrails being laid into the old movie. But as far as like all of the films being changed, I don't know about that 100%, but I wouldn't put it past anybody or anything. It's wild because we have free will, and these are laws. We're supposed to be able to do with our lives what we want, but through all the manipulation and coercion and gaslighting, it's almost like free will is hijacked. So even though it feels like that there's so many things being done that are against like God's will, they sneakily tell us the truth through movies like Geostorm, or through disclosure movies like, I don't know if you've seen the film Snowpiercer, but the beginning of the film is chemtrails. And then as they whiten the sky, it says, global warming got so bad that we had to dim the sun, but we did it too much and put the whole world into an ice age. Now everyone's dead except for the people on this train, high-speed train going around the world. And it's like, that's the premise, that they chemtrailed the world to death. And so that's literally like this disclosure, like we're telling them that it's bad, but through Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's like people don't realize the difference between fact and fiction. And when they sit down at the movie theater and temporarily suspend their disbelief, they don't realize that they're still programmed as they walk out of the theater. There's so many levels to it. Another bit of Hollywood that's shocking and revealing is the hero syndrome. people think that there's a hero that's going to save the world in about an hour and a half, and that all we need to do is like maybe hide them under our floorboards, or maybe, you know, give them a sandwich as they run by, or whatever, you know, but we don't have to be the heroes. But that's a programming, because all of us have the ability to have a rising consciousness, heart opening, and be the hero that saves all of humanity. All of us have it within our DNA. But by telling us and programming us to think that we're this automaton, you know, cog in a wheel, and that we're useless and that we have no power.
Nihilistic concept, all that.
Yeah. We give away our true abilities. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of that in Stoicism. If you read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, you know, he talks about how we're insignificant and a lot of that. So a lot of people get into this sort of nihilistic worldview, but I have a simple analogy that I give my students, which I'll share with you to help prove how powerful any one of us can be. I say, okay, let's do a thought experiment. We're going to blow up a balloon and we'll pretend that we're God. We're creating a universe. You blow that balloon up nice and big and you tie a knot in it and you say that this is the universe. And I say, okay, now if I hand you a wire that's so thin you can barely even see it, which would represent one of us, and you poke that balloon, what will happen? Well, everybody agrees it'll explode. I say that's the power of one person. We all are invested with the spirit and all the qualities inherent in God as creative. And we each have the ability to be a Martin Luther King, a JFK, a Nikola Tesla, etc. We've seen, look, Mahatma Gandhi took on the British government by himself and got his country back. He trained billions of Indians, millions and millions of them, to be nonviolent, and made a spiritual quest against the British government and took over one of the most powerful militaries in the world and got his country back through nonviolent means. So, you know, my message to the people caught in a nihilistic thought of the human beings are not powerful and what can I do as one little person against something like this? This is the perfect time to step into your soul's potential and really use your heart and go out there. And I tell people all the time, look, if you love to dance, dance some truth. If you love to paint, paint some truth. If you love to write, write some truth. If you like to sing, sing some truth. We've had people like Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Joni Mitchell and many, many others throughout history singing with such clarity that the government had to try to get rid of them and block them and do all that sort of stuff. There's an actual great movie out on the story of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's all about how the government, you know, really tried to control them and you know, stop them from passing so much truth to the people through their music. And it's quite a wild story. But, you know, if any one of us just follows our heart and lives a life based in doing what we love to do and giving that love to the world, then the revolution is on. And as long as they keep people thinking small and inconsequential and powerless, then the game is tipped in their favor. But I think it's really, really important. I've studied the lives of at least 150 of the world's greatest thinkers, inventors, teachers, spiritual people. And all of them came from, with rare exceptions, came from very tough beginnings, very tough lives. The cards were stacked against them, but they all really followed their heart and generally made the world a lot better place for all souls here. And I think it's time for everybody to really dream big and dream together, because you can't do anything of meaning by yourself. Gandhi couldn't do it himself. He had to educate people. Nobody can do it alone. My next question, which I think is an interesting one, are you familiar with chaos mathematics and the butterfly effect? Well, based on chaos mathematics and the butterfly effect, it always makes me wonder, you know, what the knock-on effect of all this geoengineering could be, because you're dealing with an integrated hydrological cycle weather system that's a global system. And then if you study James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, which is really very profound and beautiful, you see that the whole planet is an integrated living being. And so what are your thoughts on what could be the knock-on effect of all this by messing with the natural systems of the planet, its own systems regulation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to jump back to your statement earlier about humanity and the revolution is on and all of that. I always like to say that if your passion is knitting, then knit for truth. Whatever your passion may be, if you can apply it to the truth of the world that is so desperate in need of all of our attention, then humanity will rise, because that's the recipe, right? And so we can all play our part. In a lot of these documents on geoengineering, which is such a fascinating and diabolical rabbit hole, because a lot of papers and studies and whatnot through the military industrial complex, what have you, they don't use the certain key words like chemtrails, contrails, geoengineering. There's an article out of the Department of Energy called the Tropospheric Aerosol Program, TAP, came out right before 9/11 in 2001. And it's a 99-page document that outlines the launch of a massive chemtrail program through the Department of Energy. On the last page, they outline budgetary processes, and $5 million is spent on risk aversion and detection assessment, like not trying to get caught, right? Doing what they're doing. And there's programs under SRM, solar radiation management. There's programs under, like we said, Satan and CARE, and they're all under different names and what have you. But they're all doing the same thing: spraying the sky, weather engineering, all trying to normalize the geoengineering sun dimming campaigns to increase the reflectivity of the earth, to bounce back sunlight, to supposedly save us from this demonized sun. A lot of these publications out of Harvard and what have you, they have this reference of the global south. This is like a word throughout these, like it's woven throughout all of these publications, whether it's from Harvard or even there's universities across the board and different scientific communities, what have you. And they keep using this word global south in reference to geoengineering. So the global south is a mix of modern day geoengineering and slavery, okay, because south. And what they're referencing is the global south is the non-white people of the world. So like South America, Africa, what have you, they will be more severely impacted by the geoengineering campaigns, because whereas we're steering the jet stream, making sure that North America gets the water and North America gets enough adequate sunlight and what have you, and we're spraying this here and that people downstream will be more severely impacted. So we're going to be taking care of ourselves, don't worry. And this Northwestern University, they ran with it and had a conference where they established what they called the Solar Geoengineering Governance Regime. And scientists such as David W. Keith out of Harvard, who is the Bill Gates puppet, who is the front runner talker of the geoengineering, these people, supposed scientists, came together and they claim that they have the technology to save humanity. Therefore, they shouldn't be subject to the laws that exist, like patent reviews and what have you. So they should be able to bypass laws, save humanity. And because they're the ones saving humanity, then they should be saving themselves and the other people that will be impacted that aren't pulling the strings. You know, the non-United Nations countries of the world, they'll have to just deal. They'll have to deal with drought and they'll have to deal with the repercussions thereof, because we can't really save everyone. So the global south will be impacted severely, but don't worry, we'll be taking care of ourselves as much as we can. So to answer your question, yeah, that's why after the Vietnamese conflict, after the war in Vietnam, the United Nations came together and said, oh, you all did weather warfare for like 5 straight years, flooding the Ho Chi Minh Trail, titled it Project Popeye. And so with Popeye, the whole world realized that weather warfare was a thing. And the United Nations just came together and unanimously voted 54 countries to 0 that weather warfare would be banned because you can't determine how it's going to impact countries that aren't even involved. You take away the rain here, then there's drought in the neighboring country, or you flood out this, and then the water goes downstream and floods the next. You can't. Weather warfare has no borders. So in that legislation, though, there was argument like, what if we want to test and weaponize our stuff? Can we at least test it on our home turf? And so then countries started just doing it to themselves. And that's why it's quote legal to do this experimentation on your own population, because you're not allowed to do it to others, but you can do it to yourself, because who's going to regulate that? So that's my verbose answer to your question. But yeah, of course, the hydrological system is very complex. And if you start cutting the head off of certain hydra here and there, you're just going to create bigger problems. And they think that they can just, well, really the goal is to accidentally throw us into an ice age, is what I'm thinking. Because as we witness, the dimming of the sun doesn't do what they say. I've witnessed spraying of chemtrails, and they're actually trapping heat, making heat waves. So they're not really slowing down any heating. They're actually making heating happen. But if you put enough in between us and the sun, you'll throw us into a massive ice age, and all plant life will die. And then back to that talk of abundance and scarcity and food shortages, they will create the food shortages and scarcity, and then the natural abundance that we all have and thrive on and have for centuries, it'll be lacking because of their geoengineering program. So again, a problem, reaction, solution scenario to put us into dystopia. But the real problem is, again, the geoengineering.
What are you planning on sharing in Frankenskies 2, just so people can kind of be aware of what might be worthy of them watching that documentary and learning more?
Well, the first film, Frankenskies, that came out in 2017, available for free online, frankenskies.com. And really, if you just look on any of your video platforms, wherever you like to watch things, it's there. It's been reposted. It's been shared by thousands or tens of thousands of people all over the world. It's readily available for you in your language. It's been translated in so many languages. So please check it out. It's a historical chronological timeline documentary that shows from 1920s, footage from 1920s, all the way to 2017 to modern day, how we got to where we're at. So for people that don't know, I was able to pull a coworker from my job once and sit them down. And once they got 10 minutes into the movie, they're like, oh, wow, they've been doing this for a while. It's real. But they were in complete denial before they saw the history. It's important to grasp that this didn't just start yesterday, because it's such a massive conspiracy that if you don't see how we got to modern day, then it's not easy enough to sink your teeth into and to just have this leap of faith that it's a real thing. But once you see the history, you're able to grasp it. The Frankenskies 2 will take us from modern day into the future, and how we can empower ourselves through protecting ourselves with mineralization and chelation. It's going to talk about the World Economic Forum and the FIRE agenda, and how they're pushing people into smart city, 15-minute cities, and the net zero plan, the sustainability agenda goals of removing dams to create problems. In Europe right now, they're removing dams at a pace of about 500 dams a year. Like, I know Italy, Spain, Portugal, France especially, they're removing dams left and right to restore native waterways, they call it. Well, this is creating flood zones where there are cities like Valencia, Spain, and then these floodings happen, and they say, oh, it's global warming. It's because people emit too much carbon. Carbon is 0.04% of our atmosphere. It could go up tenfold. It could quadruple. We'd all be happy. If it got cut in half, we might all die. So it's a very necessary gas, and people don't grasp that it's only 0.04% of our atmosphere. People don't understand that the number one greenhouse gas is actually water vapor. That's something that people don't grasp. But the whole talk of like cows releasing methane or cows and carbon, this is all lies and falsehoods.
I just want to interject. I recently studied an article. If you're not familiar with Madhava, M-A-D-H-A-V-A SETI, he shared an article that was actually an AI review of all the historical information on global warming, and it summarized countless numbers of studies and showed that there actually is no global warming, that it's just a natural cycle. But one of the things in the paper it was actually published in a peer-reviewed journal, which was quite shocking. But they said one of the things that the historical record shows, and I've heard people sampling ice cores say this, is that the temperature actually, when you follow the temperature fluctuations, the temperature rises before the amount of carbon in the atmosphere does, and that the concept of that the carbon raising the temperature is backwards. It's not even true. It's much more of a complex system than that. So I found that was very interesting. But I've also listened to a number of podcasts with very, very skilled meteorologists that have had records going back to the 1840s and spent their whole life tracking this, and they made it dead clear that this is all a cooked up scam. In fact, one guy said the hottest day on record was in Chicago in 1953, and we haven't exceeded it since 1953. And they say, if anything, we're going to a cooling trend, not a warming trend. And Greg Braden, who's a geologist, and you probably know who Greg Braden is, but he exposed on Danica Harris's podcast how they gather their data, and basically it's the same way they cooked up all the COVID variants. They use computer-generated models, and he said their data gathering system is not accurate, and so they publish all sorts of data that looks very real, but it's actually not accurate or reliable. They just publicize it as fact, but it's not fact. I think the one thing we do have is a problem with global toxicity. I think that all the incineration of plastics and oil and all the other things that we're doing on the planet is just poisoning the planet. I think the carbon issue is not the issue, it's the toxicity issue. And we can see that evidence very clearly because there's reports from all over the world of estrogenic chemicals from plastics causing fish to lose their sex, that you have fish now being found with male and female characteristics, and frogs and all sorts of other stuff. In one of my research papers I studied for writing my book, Under the Veil of Deception, What Uncle Sam Isn't Telling You About Organic Food and Organic Farming. For example, these scientists showed that 1 drop of estrogen would create a measurable shift in the energy of the equivalent of 800 rail tankers of water. So 1 drop of estrogen can create a measurable change in a volume of water equal to 800 railway tankers, which is probably about, I would imagine one of those tankers is probably about 8,000 to 10,000 gallons. And so if you did that times 800, that's a big amount of water for a 1 drop of a substance. So we're playing with some pretty toxic substances that we need to all pay close attention to. And when Trump starts shutting the EPA down and opening up for more drilling and manufacturing, what we're doing is it looks good for the economy, and it might be good for the economy, but it's actually just playing right into the deeper problem that we're poisoning nature and killing the entire planet. Steiner warned there's 2 things human life depends on, and he said, if either of them reaches a critically low level, life will cease to exist as you know it. And that was bees and trees. And we're at the threshold level on bees and trees right now. And we have been for probably 50 years. But with all the electromagnetic pollution, there's tons of research projects now showing how EMF pollution is wiping the bee population out. And so is many beekeepers that have had serious problems with bees dying off have done autopsies and chemical analysis and found that the bees are loaded with pesticides. So it's one beekeeper did a video that I saw, which was quite shocking. You may have heard about this. He a bunch of beehives, and he took a iPhone and set it in one of the beehives, and the bees never came back. They flew out and never came back. And he showed no matter what you do, as soon as you get an iPhone near bees, a lot of them will die and the rest of them will take off and never come back. So they're very, very sensitive to EMF pollution, which, I know you're an activist for EMF pollution. We're quite far into the podcast, so maybe you can just give us a brief overview of what are some of the key concerns that we should all be aware of with EMF pollution. We've touched on 5G. It still amazes me how unconscious people are with the danger of cell phones and Bluetooth headphones. I see tons of people wearing Bluetooth headphones. I mean, they don't realize they're just radiating the shit out of their brain. I saw a research paper many years ago by a guy named Ross Addy, and he showed that the signal strength of a cell phone, for example, if you're holding a phone to your head and the signal's passing through your head, maybe you're in a building, most people know you can't get a signal, you got to walk to a window. Then you can get a signal. But if you're turned so that the cell phone is on the opposite side of the window, then the signal's going through your head because the antenna is drawing it through your head. He showed that the signal strength of a typical cell phone is 1 million times stronger than the signal that brain cells use to communicate to each other. So the analogy that I give people, I say, have you ever seen that Maxell commercial where they turn the speakers up so loud it blows the guy right out of his chair? Well, imagine if I was talking to you right now and somebody turned the volume up 1 million times, it would explode your eardrums and it might kill you. So people don't realize that compared to the extremely low voltage and amperage that the cells of the body work on, which is somewhere between minus 50 and minus 90 volts, depending on what's going on in your body, a cell phone frequency is, the energy in that thing is way, way, way higher than our cell systems use to communicate. So it's like getting hit by a slow lightning bolt, But anyhow, I'd love to just expose people to some of the key concerns and what your activism approach is trying to help educate people on.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I started learning about EMF because I had some toxic exposure to a smart meter. I was working on Frankenstein's the movie and spending my days in a cabin, and I slept and worked like 3 feet from a smart meter. And now I've learned that the smart meter, not only does it give off an electromagnetic field, it also gives off a magnetic field. So when you're really close to it, the magnetic field can really mess you up. And we are beings of electricity. Each of our organs, our brain, our hearts, our kidneys, what have you, they all have a different frequency, and all of our different organs together in concert harmonize. And so disrupting that with electro frequencies and whatnot, it's very toxic. So it's so important to first learn about grounding. Like, we get hit with all this dirty electricity and it just wants to find its way out of us. Then we have rubber soles and we don't realize that just touching the earth or putting our feet in something that's conductive, like wet earth or wet sand or a river or whatever it may be, we drop all these dirty positive electrons and rebalance the energy, and we get rid of the dirty electricity. So as a chemtrail activist, I realized that chemtrails was not going to pay the bills, and I wanted to create a way to protect people from EMF radiation, especially as I started to learn about 5G and as that started to roll out. So I started off creating these Faraday foam bags where you put your phone inside of this blackout bag and you get no signal. Thought people might like that for a date or dinner or whatever. And it shows that there is a fabric that can protect from the radiation because nothing works inside of these bags. Then I started making clothing, and now I have grounding mats and baby blankets and even blue light blocking glasses. And I'm even selling incandescent light bulbs. So I've started this company called Spero, S-P-E-R-O. It's a Latin word. It means hope in Latin, and I hope in Italian and Spanish. The goal is to bring hope through awareness, education, and shielding protection of EMF to the next generation through this project. I launched the company in 2018, and I'd like to say that come 2020, I had these foam bags. I was selling them all over the world. In March 2020, this is a very important piece of the puzzle that I'd like to share with everyone, because I was like front line learning about EMF radiation and the exposure to the world and whatnot. My blackout foam bags were all over the world. I'd sold so many, and I'd gone on Coast to Coast AM a couple of times and gotten them really out there. Everyone was happy with them. In March 2020, a lot of the bags just stopped working. People's phones started emitting a lot more radiation. And I didn't understand why. I was like, oh, did you get a new phone? No, they didn't get a new phone. At first, I thought it was a manufacturer's defect, but then eventually I had to just ditch all my old inventory and double layer my phone bags with 2 layers of silver fabric instead of 1. And slowly but surely, after having 8 iterations of these foam bags and having to troubleshoot again after the Omicron variant came out, I started to see a correlation between people not being able to have their phones blacked out in these foam bags, otherwise meaning the frequency on these phones was being cranked up so much, and people having ailments like loss of taste and hair loss and all these things during the lockdowns. And after really doing some deep investigative research, I don't just jump to conclusions. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm very statistically based, like stats, and there's corollary or causal relationships between numbers and what have you. And over time, I was able to conclude that 5G was actually making people ill. And I believe that the COVID lockdowns and all that was a smokescreen for the rollout of 5G. Was there other things going on? Very likely, yes. But there was a smokescreen because otherwise people would say, I think this 5G's made me sick. All of a sudden, me and my family all got new phones and we all lost our taste buds the next day and our hair is falling out, like what's going on? But there was something out there that everyone was able to point the finger at. So it's very important. Also regarding EMF, there's so many elephants in the room. These wireless earbuds that everyone wears, these things communicate through your brain. Okay, so they send signals through your brain, and it's very toxic. This Bluetooth radiation is very toxic. It's been proven to inhibit plant growth, and EMF radiation makes mold toxins and aflatoxins go wild. It causes inflammation in your body and messes with the electrical synapses in your brain and what have you. I mean, all of the digging and research that you could find surrounding this, even the fact that your phone says to not put it directly to your head, you never should be wearing these wireless earbuds. I don't know if you think they look cool or what, but they should be put in the trash. I don't care how much you spent on them. They're very toxic, and you don't want to have a brain tumor. I mean, you don't want to have to deal with these things. John McCain, who was a U.S. senator, he held his phone to his head a lot, and then he got a brain tumor. And then he said, oh, it's right there where I held my phone. He got the brain tumor removed. He was very vocal about it. He got another brain tumor, and he died from brain cancer from holding the phone to his brain, allegedly. In the movie Generation Zapped, there's women that put their phone in their bra, and they have tumors at a right angle, little tumors at the exact footprint of the phones.
Yeah.
So it's like you should not be holding these things close to your body. And the 5G technology, like 4G LTE stands for long-term evolution. So even though you might not have gotten a brand new phone, the software has changed. And now the 5G tech is so much more predatory and people don't grasp what it is. Your phone before was a cell phone interacting with a cell tower, shooting the signal out to find the closest cell tower. Now, with the 5G infrastructure, your cell phone is a mobile node in the system. It is now a small cell tower. It is acting as a cell tower. The 5G carrier wave is so small, it can't go very far, so it has to piggyback on all the other phones to help repeat the signal to get it to the next closest cell tower. So you could be cranking everybody in your neighborhood's signal to get it to the cell tower that's down the street just based on where you are. And this carrier wave, now that it's measured in millimeters, it is way more absorptive than ever before. If you start to look and do the research, which I had to go to the library to really get through all the misinformation, disinformation during the lockdowns, but it's very simple, actually. You've got radio waves everywhere, from AM to FM to Wi-Fi, all these radio waves. Data is applied to it and travels on it to transfer information. So radio waves carry signals. So you've got AM radio waves and FM and all this, and it's actually all light. It's just light that we can't see. Based on the curvature of our eyes, we can only see light as it is: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, Roy G. Biv. But there is light around us that we can't see, like infrared and ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet, yeah.
And as that spectrum expands, there's other things that are our actual light waves. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second and it has properties like how tall is the wave and how many hertz, how many times does it go by per second. And there's different light waves that our body and our eyes cannot see, but they're out there. And radio waves are light waves that carry information that we cannot see. So AM radio waves are 100 feet tall, and AM radio waves go rather far and go right through things. FM radio waves are 10 feet tall. They go through things too, and they don't impact us the way that a millimeter size carrier wave does, because now we're getting down to a millimeter, which is the width of a penny, whereas Wi-Fi, it was measured in centimeters, and it modulates and is kind of toxic. And I recommend people getting wired internet or putting your Wi-Fi on a timer or what have you, but nothing has ever been like this millimeter sized carrier wave, because it absorbs into everything it hits, including us. Even Wi-Fi will go right through you. Even 4G will go right through you. And it's makes sense to be communications technology to carry your data around. 5G does not make sense to be carrier waves for technology. They have to go into cities and cut down trees. They have to put repeater stations everywhere. They have to integrate the cell phones to be mobile nodes in this cellular network. And in being a millimeter size wave that's absorptive into everything, it's surely impacting our reproductive organs. And you find people that aren't being able to conceive children even now. And the clinics are saying, get that phone out of your pocket for 3 months, then to the males, and then their sperm counts go up. It's definitely wreaking havoc on people's systems. And it's important for people to grasp what we're dealing with.
Yeah, the shorter the wave or the faster, the more energy it carries too. A lot of people don't realize that. So when you go from AM to FM and you progressively go down the scale, or you just go up in hertz, you're getting a lot more energy in the wave. And, some people that aren't very educated think, oh, it's such a small wave, it can't hurt you. Like you got your wires crossed. It's the opposite. Now, here's something I want to get your opinion on, because I found this quite mysterious and fascinating. I've now seen 3 videos showing this. 3 different phone repairmen have opened up 5G phones and showed there is no 5G chip in them. They say they've never actually seen a phone of any generation of 5G that has a 5G chip. And they actually show that there's a little space where the chip would go, but there's nothing in it. And this is iPhones and all of them. Have you seen that? And they're saying whatever 5G is, it's not coming through your phones. It's being used for something else. And that's the big question we should all be asking.
Well, that's fascinating, but it does make sense, because 4G LTE is basically 5G. It stands for long-term evolution, meaning your 4G LTE software and phone will evolve into a 5G phone. And that means that it doesn't need a new chip. It doesn't need anything but a software upgrade in the middle of the night while you're sleeping and whatnot. So the idea of, I don't have a 5G phone and all that, it's not very actually realistic. People don't even understand what they're walking around with in their pocket. The technology changed on you overnight without even replacing your hardware. And that's a big mind F for people that don't grasp it overall. So because I was able to find this silver fabric that blocked the signal, I started making sweatshirts and beanies and all sorts of stuff like that. And I have a coupon code for your listeners, Actual Activists, no space, and that'll give them a discount if they want to check out the merch. But there's a great blog on there, and it's important for people to even realize that there is something you can shield with, because people think that there's nothing that can be done. It's actually, there's a lot that can be done. You can shield yourself from the radiation. You can learn about grounding. You can mitigate your exposure. You can learn about airplane mode. You can put your Wi-Fi on a timer. There's so many things. You can educate your friends, family, and peers about baby monitors. Those things are toxic. Get those out of the crib. Anything wireless has radiation. And I think the first step in becoming an actual activist in this space, get yourself a decent EMF reader and find out if your home is toxic, and then mitigate, get yourself some old lead paint if there's a cell tower nearby, or whatever you need to do to mitigate and have less exposure. But get yourself a healthy sleeping environment, get that phone out of your bed, and start taking these little baby steps towards honing in on a better circadian rhythm, and not blasting yourself with light all the time, because your body gets so confused and it absorbs the light, because that's what your endocrine system and your skin is used to doing. It's absorbing the wrong light, though, and it's leading to problems.
Are you familiar with the mineral shungite?
Yes, shungite is a carbon C60 like buckyball formation, and it's a very powerful mineral. People will put shungite in their water, and it'll structure their water. People wear shungite necklaces to try to protect from the EMF. I believe what the shungite is doing is it's structuring our cells, or even making fields through its structuring like things imitate it, like water or even humid air, because it's got this perfect buckyball carbon C60 structure. So if you wear it as a necklace, your cells or your water in your body will structure, and then you're more stronger from the EMF attack and what have you. Does it protect you 100%? Not necessarily. I've gotten shungite, and I've tried to have it impact my meters, my EMF meters, and I've never been able to make it go down. But I do think that it structures the water that it's around, and it does help. But in terms of EMF, I think it might be a little bit of false hope, because more importantly is shielding, getting away from the source of radiation, learning about the inverse square law, where radiation is light, and just like light and sound, it dissipates exponentially as you get distance away from it, like a crying baby. You get like one room away from the crying baby. It's not piercing your ears, just like the Wi-Fi router. You just got to get one room away, and it's not impacting you anymore.
Yeah, the shungite has been used by beekeepers. We have bees here, and they found it very, very effective. And the bees are much more robust when they put shungite in the beehives and around them. We put a bunch of shungite, ground shungite, at the base of our beehives, and I've got big chunks of it around the house for EMF protection. But it's just some, like every little bit helps. So I just thought I would mention it. Just, I was curious if you had known about shungite. We use biogeometry through our houses, and it's extremely beautiful and effective, and it basically changes the environment so that it's far, far safer. Are you familiar with Ibrahim Karim and biogeometry?
Yes, I am. And I mean, just simple things like feng shui, like energy flows, energy very real, and addressing it and having it flow properly and creating a safe space. Like I'm a big fan of yurts with like no corners and what have you. There's a lot of power in all these things. And many of these things are demonized by the mainstream media because they hold so much power. Just like you won't hear about. We talked about plant medicines earlier, but I think it's very important to learn about things like kava, and to have heart-opening kava ceremonies with your friends and family and peers and whatnot. But you're not going to see that in the mainstream media. You're going to hear about big pharma and take statins and what have you. But statins will actually dry up your brain and lead to Alzheimer's and dementia. Like, people should not be taking statins whatsoever.
Well, they poison your body for one. But I've got 3 podcasts with Ibrahim Karim. My wife is almost finished with her training to be an instructor. We're going to start running biogeometry training through the Chek Institute so that people can get certified and add that to their training, because it's so effective. I've seen miracles with biogeometry, many of them, and my wife's very, very good at it. So that's an option out there. So if you want to listen to anybody listening to my podcast with Ibrahim Karim, there's 3 of them, and they're all fantastic. But the first one is where we go into how biogeometry works and what it is. The second one is with his daughter, Dorea, who's also one of the instructors, and it answers a lot of the questions that people had from the first podcast. The third one, I believe, was episode 200, and it was a special visit with Ibrahim Karim. We got into all sorts of stuff like what happens when you die and things like that, because he's a very spiritually evolved guy, so I love talking to him. Robert Gilbert's series on sacred geometry on Gaia, I think episode 4 features Ibrahim Karim's biogeometry, and it has a lot of the research that was done, scientific research, showing how powerful biogeometry is for decreasing the negative effects of cell phone towers, radio towers, a lot of stuff I won't go into, but it's really worth looking into. And the whole series by Robert Gilbert on sacred geometry is fascinating. And unfortunately, Robert recently passed away, so that was quite a shock. But just, you never know when the angel of death comes to collect you. Matt, what a great podcast. I'm really grateful. I love your depth. I love your, the spiritual dimension of you. I love your open-mindedness, your willingness to really dig into the research, and your, knowledge and interest in statistical analysis and not, looking at things too superficially. It's been a great journey. We'll have all your websites again in the show notes. I'm really glad that you have your Sparrow company out there selling that kind of stuff. So thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really great. No matter no matter how you leave the world, I can say you left the world a little better than you found it. So thank you, bud.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Likewise. I really appreciate it. And I encourage everyone out there to also consider becoming actual activists. There's always going to be something, a little devil in your ear, whispering in your ear, saying like, you're not going to fit in, you're going to be ostracized or bullied or something like that. But there's no more righteous path than showing the rest of the world out of the dark. And only you know how to meet your people. And you're surrounded by all these people that you could really help. So I encourage everyone to find their passion and to run with it and to be that light that they want to shine for the world, because, being the change, it's not a spectator sport. It's time to get off the sidelines, really. And the time is now. So thanks everyone for listening. And thank you, Paul, for having me on.
Yes. And thanks to all of you guys for going on this journey with us and being the change. And remember, I think one of the most important things we shared today is, it's not like you got to go out and make yourself miserable to be a part of the process of change. Do the things you love to do and share the truth and share resources and share podcasts like this and inspire people to actually have a look instead of just watching mainstream media and listening to, the typical bullshit that indoctrinates people. And that's how we do it together. And thank you to all my sponsors for your amazing products. Everything you buy from my sponsor goes into the hands of biodynamic farmers, organic farmers, free-range farmers, supports the planet, supports companies that are making great health products for you, supports you, and supports the podcast. So it's a win-win-win-win-win, baby. So thanks to all of you. I will be back in a week with something interesting and exciting and juicy and lots of love. And once again, Matt, thank you very much, bud. You did a great job today. I really appreciate all that you shared with us.
Thank you, Paul. Bless you. And maybe we can do it again when I come out with the sequel.
Not a question, baby. Just let me know and you're on. Oh.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Matt Landman. Make sure you watch Matt's documentary, Frankenskies, available online at frankenskies.com. That's FrankenSkies.com. You can also follow Matt on Facebook at Landman808 and check out his site actualactivists.com for ways that you can act and show your support. Matt is also giving Spirit Gym podcast listeners 10% off his Spiro EMF protective clothing and accessories, which provide shielding from EMF radiation. Go to spirogear.com and use the code actualactivists. That's SPEROGEAR.com and use the code actualactivists for 10% off. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join his Spirit Gym program and community. There are 3 different levels of membership to fit your budget and lifestyle. You can participate in live Q&A sessions with podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community where you can chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study the comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.